On a quiet Saturday evening in West Hollywood, an awful incident occurred inside an apartment just a few blocks from the busy city streets. Despite the calmness, no unusual sounds, no loud arguments or cries for help, but behind that door, a disagreement escalated into a serious situation. When police and firefighters finally entered the apartment, they were stunned by what they found, even experienced officers. What really happened that night? Kirtland Ma was born on December 24, 1979, in Scottsdale, Arizona, in the eastern part of Maricopa County. He was the youngest of two sons of Danny and Peggy Ma, a Chinese-American couple. Kirtland grew up in a loving and peaceful environment. He was a deeply cherished child, especially by his maternal grandparents, Wing Doi Jimmy and Ellen Lee. With his friendly demeanor and constant smile, he had a natural charm that endeared him to everyone, making his grandparents feel incredibly fortunate to have him as their grandson. Kirtland showed early academic potential in elementary school, but it was in high school that his passion for learning really blossomed. He was not only a talented student but also had a strong curiosity that drove him to seek knowledge beyond what was taught in classes. After regular school hours, he took advanced mathematics courses at another institution, aiming to push himself further. One day, while heading to one of these extra classes, he met a girl his age from a different school. Their brief conversation left a lasting impression. She was drawn to Kirtland's kindness and sense of humor, and he felt the same way. From that point on, they became very close. During their junior year, they both transferred to the same school in Phoenix. Soon after, she worked up the courage to confess her feelings for Kirtland, believing he was her soulmate. She shared her deep love for him, but Kirtland, although considerate, did not feel the same way. He viewed her more like a sister. This left she heartbroken, but eventually, she recognized the value of their friendship and chose to cherish it instead of dwelling on unrequited love. Meanwhile, Kirtland focused even more on his studies, which led him to excel academically and stand out among his peers. In 1997, Kirtland took a standardized school assessment test, an important exam in the U.S. used to evaluate students' reading, writing, and math skills, which is often crucial for university admissions. His score was nearly perfect, earning him the distinguished title of Presidential Scholar, an honor for the country's top students. Kirtland was dedicated to his studies, but he also believed in leading a balanced life, which led him to compete in tennis. He frequently participated in city tournaments, many hosted at local universities, highlighting his versatility and discipline. In 1998, Kirtland started a new chapter at Yale University, choosing to major in American Studies. As he adapted to campus life, he was assigned to a residential college and shared a room with a student named Michael. The two quickly became close friends. Michael was particularly impressed by Kirtland's constant kindness and selflessness. He was someone who offered help without expecting anything in return. Michael's impressions were spot on. Kirtland's calm demeanor, patience, and genuine kindness made him magnetic. He easily connected with others, not out of effort, but because it was part of his character. His fellow students at Yale quickly recognized his captivating personality, sharp intellect, and humble nature, leading them to respect and befriend him. As people got to know him better, many realized that he was a trusted confidant. Friends often turned to him for advice, and Kirtland never let them down. He showed his appreciation not through grand declarations but through thoughtful gestures. During trips to New York City, just a couple of hours away from campus, he would often return with small gifts for those he cared about. Although he and female friend no longer lived in the same city, their friendship never faded. In one of their many conversations, she asked him why he never spoke about dating women. Deep down, she believed his silence was a kind way of sparing her feelings, but she wasn't prepared for the answer Kirtland gave. In a moment of honesty, Kirtland shared a part of himself he had kept private. He simply wasn't attracted to women. He explained that he was gay. She, surprised but open-hearted, listened carefully. Although it saddened her to think that Kirtland hadn't felt safe sharing this sooner, that conversation, free of judgment and full of trust, marked a turning point. It allowed Kirtland to embrace his identity more freely. From that day forward, he confided in she about the men he was attracted to. After graduating in 2002, Kirtland pursued another dream, traveling the world. His first destination was China, where he taught English and later took part in a cultural exchange program. This experience led him to Spain, where he lived with a host family and immersed himself in a different culture. Those months abroad helped him gain clarity about his future. By 2004, Kirtland realized he wanted to become a doctor. Driven by a strong sense of purpose, he returned to Yale, this time attending its School of Medicine. He continued to excel academically, writing his medical thesis on how traditional Chinese medicine could be applied to treat HIV patients in Hong Kong. After earning his degree in 2008, Kirtland moved to Manhattan to start his emergency medicine residency. During this time, he volunteered with a team of about 40 local healthcare professionals dedicated to educating New York's LGBTQ community about the risks associated with illicit substance use and unsafe intimate relationships. Kirtland's dedication as a doctor shone through when he made an exceptional and precise diagnosis for a patient with a rare type of fish poisoning. This case was significant enough to be featured in an article in the New York Times. Outside of his medical career, Kirtland enjoyed a lively social life, attending various gatherings and events when his schedule permitted. It was during one of these social outings that he met Andre Davids. Born in 1977 and a native of New York, Andre was very close to his sister. Unlike Kirtland, who was outgoing, Andre was more introverted. At that time, Andre was undergoing medical treatment, but the details of his condition were kept private. What was known was that his treatment involved medication that could potentially interact dangerously with other substances. Despite their differing personalities, Kirtland and Andre quickly felt a strong attraction to each other. What began as a friendship soon blossomed into a romantic relationship. Even though Kirtland was open about many aspects of his life, he chose to keep his relationship with Andre private for a long time, even from his closest friends and family. By the time he completed his medical residency, he felt it was time to take a break from the pace of New York City. Longing to reconnect with his family, Kirtland returned to Arizona in July 2012. He temporarily moved in with his parents, Peggy and Danny. Grateful to be home again and the support of his loved ones, Kirtland shared his happiness on social media. Soon after, he began working at 2 hospitals in the Phoenix metropolitan area. Though miles apart, his bond with Andre remained strong. He also kept in touch with his friends in New York, often reuniting with them during visits, whether they came to Arizona or he traveled east. Eventually, Andre began accompanying him on these trips until, in 2013, he decided to move to Arizona permanently to be closer to Kirtland. That September, Kirtland posted a photo of the two of them together online, making their relationship public for the first time. The revelation surprised some friends, but they warmly welcomed Andre into their circle. They didn't just offer polite gestures, they genuinely tried to include him socially. However, from the outset, Andre seemed reluctant to connect. His jealousy toward Kirtland's friendships gradually became more noticeable over time. This possessiveness intensified, and he began asking Kirtland to avoid spending time with his friends. Kirtland, ever the optimist, remained calm. He didn't allow Andre's behavior to derail his own goals. He continued making plans with his friend, even organizing trips together. Rather than feel discouraged, Kirtland believed that a new environment might help their relationship. He dreamed of moving to a more open and accepting place for LGBT people, somewhere they could thrive as a couple. After giving it thoughtful consideration, California seemed like the perfect destination. He was excited by the idea and shared his vision with Andre, assuring him that they would embark on this new chapter together. Once they relocated, Kirtland began working at a hospital. Simultaneously, he looked forward to being more active in the LGBT community. California, with its vibrant culture and inclusivity, felt like the ideal place to do just that. True to his enthusiastic nature, the prospect energized him deeply. In February 2014, they rented an apartment in West Hollywood, a lively neighborhood known for its nightlife and diversity. Initially, only Andre moved in, as Kirtland had to make a trip to Japan. But upon returning to the US on March 24, Kirtland sensed immediately that the change in scenery had done little to repair what was broken. The tensions between them still lingered. For the first time, he seriously contemplated ending the relationship. On the afternoon of Saturday, March 29, 2014, after a restless night for Andre, who had used banned substances and barely slept, Kirtland decided it was finally time to have the difficult conversation they had avoided for too long. Calmly, he expressed his dissatisfaction with where things were heading and admitted that he was considering dating other people. Andre, unprepared, unwilling to accept the possibility of separation, refused outright. He also rejected any suggestion of an open relationship, insisting on exclusivity. The conversation quickly escalated into an argument as tensions flared until both men reached for kitchen knives. What began as a verbal exchange devolved into a physical struggle. Kirtland, in a moment of regained clarity, attempted to de-escalate the situation, but Andre, overtaken by rage, did not stop. In a violent outburst, he seized the weapon and stabbed Kirtland repeatedly until he collapsed, lifeless. Panicked and unsure of what to do next, Andre called his sister and told her they had a serious fight, but he withheld the horrifying truth of what had just happened. Alarmed by her brother's unstable behavior and fearing he might harm himself, Andre's sister immediately contacted the police, sharing all the information she had. Officers were dispatched to the address she provided to conduct a check. However, when no one responded at the door, they eventually left the scene. As the hours passed and she remained without news, Andre's sister called the police again. This time, officers returned to the apartment, accompanied by a team of firefighters. At 4:55 p.m. on Saturday, March 29, 2014, both teams entered an apartment in West Hollywood. Inside, they found a gruesome scene. Kirtland was on the kitchen floor after a violent attack. In the bathroom, Andre was in the tub, injured and holding a knife, threatening to take his own life. Next to him were a cell phone and a bottle of pills. A police officer quickly secured the knife, while the fire department helped lift Andre out of the tub. He was taken to a nearby hospital to treat injuries on his neck and wrists. Unfortunately, paramedics confirmed that they could do nothing for Kirtland, who was officially pronounced dead by the Los Angeles County coroner just before 7 p.m. The autopsy showed the extent of Kirtland's injuries. He had suffered 40 stab wounds from various sharp kitchen tools, was disemboweled, some organs were stuffed into the mouth, and pills were stuffed into the body cavity. From the outset, Andre Davids was identified as the main suspect. At the hospital, toxicology tests revealed multiple substances in his system. When detectives spoke with Andre in his hospital room, he did not refuse to answer their questions. Instead, he confessed to the murder and recounted the events leading up to it, expressing deep remorse and a wish to end his life. On Sunday, March 30, 2014, after further investigation, Andre was arrested at the West Hollywood Sheriff's Station. He was charged with murder involving a deadly weapon and held on a $1 million bail. He was then moved to the correctional facility in Los Angeles. News of Kirtland's murder spread quickly, dominating headlines and attracting significant media attention. Just a week later, a separate violent incident in the same apartment complex injured several people, causing widespread fear among residents. Many began to reassess their safety in the area. Andre's trial started in December 2015. He faced charges of voluntary manslaughter and second-degree murder. The distinction between these charges was crucial because California law required the prosecution to prove whether the crime involved express or implied malice, which impacted the potential sentence severity. Kirtland's family advocated for the most serious charge, which could lead to life imprisonment. In contrast, the defense argued that Andre's mental state was impaired by banned substance use and prescription medications. They pointed out that Andre had no prior history of violence and claimed that the killing occurred in a moment of intense emotional distress, a common argument for reducing charges in emotionally driven crimes. The jury considered various factors, including Kirtland's stated desire to end the relationship, which may have intensified Andre's emotional turmoil. On December 17, 2015, Andre Davids was convicted of voluntary manslaughter. His sentencing hearing took place on January 21, 2016, at the Los Angeles Superior Court. A particularly emotional moment occurred when Wayland, Massachusetts, the older brother of the victim Kirtland, addressed the court. He spoke directly to Andre, conveying his deep pain and anger over the loss of his brother in such a violent manner. He expressed a wish that the memory of the crime would torment Andre for the rest of his life. In California, involuntary manslaughter carries a sentence of 3 to 11 years. The judge decided to impose the maximum sentence of 11 years, along with an additional year for the use of a deadly weapon. Kirtland's family and many others in the community were deeply troubled by the verdict, believing the sentence to be too lenient given the brutality of the crime. Some even called for a retrial to seek a harsher punishment, but the Fifth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution prohibits a second trial for the same crime. Andre's legal team appealed the 12-year sentence, seeking a reduction. The appeal was heard on November 17, 2016, by a panel of 3 judges in California's 2nd District Court of Appeal. The defense argued for a mid-range sentence of 6 years. However, the deputy district attorney described the crime scene as one of the most horrific she had ever seen, which left the judges convinced of the crime's severity. In her closing statement, the deputy district attorney highlighted Andre's danger to society. Ultimately, the judges upheld the original sentence, agreeing that the nature of the crime warranted the maximum punishment allowed by law. The tragic death of Kirtland marked a profound loss for his family, friends, and the communities he touched. A gifted doctor and compassionate soul, Kirtland's journey from a cherished child in Scottsdale to a respected physician in West Hollywood was defined by kindness, intellect, and a commitment to helping others. His life, cut short by a violent act born of personal turmoil, left an indelible void. Andre David's conviction for voluntary manslaughter and 12-year sentence offered some measure of justice, but for many, it could not erase the pain of such a brutal crime. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Kelly Brennan. On the evening of February 15, 2010, Kelly Brennan, 46, failed to show up for her scheduled gym session, which was unusual because she never missed a workout. Her trainer tried calling her, but no one answered. Soon, the disturbing truth about her situation began to emerge. Kelly's neighbor and friend, Stephanie, had seen her that morning at around 6 a.m. as Kelly was leaving for work. After their brief encounter, Stephanie went to her job and did not see or speak to Kelly again until later in the day. Despite Stephanie's efforts to reach her, she received no response. By 11 p.m., Stephanie was concerned enough to call 911 to report Kelly missing. When the police arrived at Kelly's house, Stephanie told them that Kelly had taken her sports uniform for the training session. Kelly was well known for being responsible and punctual, making her disappearance all the more alarming. Police began to gather more information about Kelly Brennan. Born in 1963 in New Jersey, she had 4 older sisters and was known for her kind personality. After graduating from high school, Kelly planned to attend medical school to study nursing. To help pay for her college tuition, she worked as a waitress. She was recognized for her independence and strong work ethic. After graduating, she moved to a small, peaceful town called Andy Allen Tick in Florida, which has a population of about 3,000 and is located on the coast. There, she became a nurse at a local hospital and also worked part-time at a restaurant. It was at this restaurant that she met her future husband, Gina, the restaurant manager. They eventually married, bringing happiness into Kelly's life. Kelly led an active lifestyle and loved sports. In addition to attending gym classes, she enjoyed biking with friends. One of her biking partners was Sheila Trott, who had moved from Canada to this beautiful resort town. Sheila worked as a diving instructor and also had a part-time job at the restaurant where Kelly was employed. Sheila met and fell in love with Daniel Trott, a charming pilot, and they married in 1989. They had 2 sons, and Sheila became a dedicated homemaker. The family was happy, and when the children grew older, Sheila pursued a career as a realtor. Meanwhile, Daniel became mayor of Andy Allen Tick in 2002, serving until 2006. Over the years, Sheila and Kelly maintained a friendship, often cycling together and enjoying time with her husband. In 2009, Sheila discovered that her husband was cheating on her, which left her devastated. Despite her grief, Sheila, with resilience, tried to save their marriage. But that did not solve their problems. In March 2009, after a difficult time, her husband Daniel filed for divorce. At the same time, Kelly was also having marital problems. She wanted a divorce, although her husband wanted to stay together. Unable to bear her unhappy situation, Kelly left her husband and moved in with her friend, Stephanie. About 6 months later, on February 15, 2010, Kelly disappeared. Police found out that Kelly had multiple sclerosis, which led them to consider the possibility that she might have been involved in a car accident and felt too weak to drive properly. They searched for her car along her route to the gym and checked local hospitals, but they found nothing. Her car was listed as wanted. The police discovered that Kelly was supposed to work a shift at the hospital and had left around 6 o'clock in the evening. They also visited the gym to talk to her trainer, who confirmed that Kelly hadn't shown up for her session by 9 o'clock. The next morning, Sheila's mother called the police to report that her daughter had suffered a nervous breakdown and had a disturbing dream about Kelly. This was strange because Sheila was unaware of Kelly's disappearance at the time. Female police officers arrived to respond to the call. Sheila's sons, who lived with her, noticed that she had been acting strangely since the night before. Concerned for her health, they took her to the hospital. But the doctors found nothing wrong and she was sent home. Upon her return, Sheila had a nightmare that caused her to scream in her sleep. Worried about Sheila, her children called their grandmother. Sheila's mother arrived that night to support Sheila and stay by her side. While in bed, Sheila kept telling her mother that she had a terrible dream about Kelly. As a result, Sheila's mother called 911 again. When the police arrived, they found Sheila in distress. When they asked her about the dream, Sheila said she had seen someone she loved and felt she had hurt someone else. She repeatedly pictured Kelly's face but couldn't explain more. She insisted that Kelly was in danger and even pointed out a specific location where she thought Kelly might be. The police followed up on this information and went to search the area Sheila indicated. The situation was complicated by the thick vegetation, which made it difficult to see clearly in the area. A helicopter was called in to search from the air. They spotted legs sticking out of the bushes. When police arrived, they found the body of a woman wearing tracksuit bottoms and who closely resembled Kelly. The body was covered in blood and showed clear signs of a struggle, although the murder may have occurred elsewhere. It seemed the crime was particularly brutal. Sheila faced skepticism about her alleged supernatural abilities. Police believed she may have testified about the incident or held valuable information regarding the case. Police spoke with Sheila and her husband, Daniel, who was in the process of divorcing her. Daniel admitted to having an affair with Kelly, which started after he moved out of Sheila's home. That evening, Daniel was anxious because Kelly did not show up at the fitness club as planned. He claimed that Sheila had found out about their affair, which led to a confrontation involving Kelly. Daniel also mentioned that Kelly's ex-husband, Gina, was aware of the affair. Gina met Daniel at Kelly's new home while she was staying with Daniel. Kelly asked Gina to leave, after which she argued with Gina, which resulted in a heated argument and Gina hitting her. Kelly called 911, but when the police arrived, she chose not to file a complaint and instead left. After this incident, Gina threatened Daniel, leading him to believe that Kelly's ex-husband might have killed her out of jealousy. The police realized that the killer might be someone involved in a complicated love triangle and decided to investigate everyone involved in the affair. Daniel had an alibi. He worked all day and then went to the gym, This left him no time to be at the site where the body was discovered, about an hour's drive from the city. The prime suspect remained Kelly's jealous husband, who had a history of violence against her. The autopsy results revealed that Kelly died from trauma caused by a blunt object striking her head, resulting in a fractured skull. There were no skin particles under her fingernails that matched the Gina's DNA, suggesting she did not fight back. This indicated that she was likely struck from behind, lost consciousness, and the attacker continued to strike her until she was no longer alive. The suspected murder weapon was a hammer. Police questioned Gina, who revealed that he had found out about his wife's affair through text messages from Sheila. He admitted to attacking Daniel but denied killing Kelly, claiming he had an alibi. The police then turned their attention to Sheila. The person had been showing signs of instability since the night before. They suspected her, especially since she was the one who revealed where Kelly's body was found. When approached by the police for questioning, Sheila refused to cooperate. The police then returned to Kelly's house, where a thorough investigation uncovered signs of a struggle. They discovered Kelly's car nearby with blood on the floor mats. Neighbors reported seeing a suspicious blonde woman arriving in a white car close to the house that evening, suggesting that Kelly was attacked as she came home. Police obtained a search warrant for Sheila's home and found her white car there. Inside the car, they discovered a drop of blood, which was sent to a lab for analysis. The test results showed that it was Kelly's blood. On February 17, 2010, Sheila was arrested. Although she knew about the situation, she chose to remain silent and not testify. Sheila tried to face first-degree murder charges. Meanwhile, police began to gather evidence against her. 4 years later, just before a scheduled court hearing, Sheila's sons, then 21 and 23, went to the police. They explained that their mother had undergone a major change after learning about her husband's affair with Kelly. Sheila became angry and directed her anger at Kelly. Her sons recalled that on February 15, 2010, Sheila had spent the day painting the walls of their home. They said she had gone to Walmart that evening and returned around 11 p.m. without purchasing anything, but wearing different clothes. Sheila eventually admitted to her sons that she had killed Kelly. But they did not believe her. They asked where Kelly's body was, and Sheila said she could show them. That night, they all got into the car and drove to the location where the body was found. The teens were frightened by the sight of the legs and ran away, confused by what they had seen. Not knowing what to do, they called their grandmother for help, after which Sheila's mother contacted the police, and they located Kelly's body based on Sheila's instructions. Shortly after, Sheila wrote a letter from prison stating that her memory had returned. She claimed that she witnessed Kelly's murder in reality, not in a dream. She described seeing Kelly being attacked by an unknown man while she was parked and waiting for her friend. No one believed Sheila's story. People questioned why she didn't call the police right after witnessing the murder. During the trial, her sons testified against her. Tensions rose in court as Sheila insisted she loved Kelly and would never hurt her, but the evidence of her actions was clear. Although Sheila stuck to her account, she couldn't convincingly explain her whereabouts in the hours leading up to the murder. Her story changed over time but never gained credibility. In the end, Sheila was convicted of premeditated murder and sentenced to life in prison without parole. Sheila's mother feels guilty for having called the police, believing she played a part in her daughter's severe sentence. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Donald Mellon. Donald Mellon grew up in a loving environment, enjoying a happy childhood in a wealthy family that owned a McDonald's in the western suburbs of Phoenix, Arizona. He was financially well off and attracted many girls, but he longed for a real family. He shunned superficial relationships and fleeting encounters. Eventually, he met his first love, Karen Dawson. Their relationship initially portrayed an ideal picture of a happy family, where Donald was a loving father and family man who was adored by his 3 daughters. He, along with his wife Karen and their children, enjoyed a comfortable life together. However, over the years, Donald developed problems with alcohol. Despite the impact on his family, he refused to seek help or stop drinking, eventually leading Karen to make the difficult decision to divorce him. This loneliness changed Donald dramatically. His old self seemed to have disappeared completely. He now sported exotic tattoos and spent his time partying at clubs, frequenting a strip club on Bourbon Street. As a regular, the club manager introduced him to Rebecca, a 23-year-old girl who had recently arrived from Nebraska. After escaping an abusive marriage, she is looking for a fresh start with her young son. Rebecca was born in Newport Beach, California, but spent most of her childhood in Omaha, Nebraska. She describes her childhood as being in a very religious household. As she entered her teens, Rebecca recounted experiences of being molested by men. She felt a lack of closeness with her parents and experienced rejection throughout her adolescence. At one point, she was placed in the custody of the Nebraska Child Welfare Department and moved between different foster homes. This sense of loneliness followed her throughout her life. When Rebecca expressed her desire to leave Omaha, her ex-boyfriend reacted violently, throwing her across the room. She was often bruised, and when she hinted at wanting to leave, he threatened her with a gun. Feeling that her life was in danger, she decided that she could no longer stay with her abusive boyfriend. One night, she escaped and ran away to Minnesota. At a cheap motel, an employee suggested that she move to Arizona, praising the beauty of the place. Rebecca really wanted to go to this place, but she decided to wait until a better time. Rebecca found a job as a sales clerk at a shopping mall, where she met a young man and they quickly got engaged in Las Vegas. He was 19 and she was 18. Their love grew stronger, and soon after, she gave birth to a son. However, their happy story took a turn for the worse. After her husband quit his job, Rebecca faced more hardships. To support her family, she began dancing at nightclubs. Fate brought Rebecca to a strip club, where she earned a good income and was able to support her family, while a nanny looked after her son. However, returning home after work was difficult because her husband, an unemployed and often drunk man, not only relied on her but also often insulted her. Eventually, Rebecca decided to leave her husband. She confided in one of her wealthy regular clients about her situation, and he gave her $20,000 to help her escape to Arizona. To protect herself, she gave a photo of her husband to the bouncers at the club, instructing them not to let him in or reveal her whereabouts. She relocated to a new apartment in East Phoenix and switched to a different nightclub. There, she met Donald. Initially, Donald wasn't fond of Rebecca, but over time, Donald became deeply infatuated with her. He loved her so much that he was willing to welcome her and her 11-year-old son into his life. However, Donald's daughters disapproved of Rebecca, believing she had a negative effect on their father. Despite their concerns, Rebecca moved in with Donald in October 2003, and they married 2 years later. Everything seemed fine until 6 months later when problems began to emerge. Rebecca, now 36, developed an alcohol addiction, influenced by her husband. Together, they drank continuously, neglecting meals. On July 31, 2012, around 10 p.m., a visibly intoxicated Rebecca called the police. She was slurring her speech and requested an ambulance for her husband, who she claimed was bleeding heavily. The police and paramedics quickly arrived at the scene to assist Donald but were taken aback by the situation. Rebecca sat calmly on the couch with a cigarette in her hand, while Donald lay bleeding on the floor beside her. As the paramedics worked on Donald, the police observed Rebecca with growing suspicion. Her apparent indifference to her husband's serious condition raised questions. They also noticed a gun protruding from beneath the pillows next to the dog and a bullet hole in the frame of her wedding portrait on the wall. In light of these findings, the police decided to take Rebecca into custody. When police questioned Rebecca about what happened, she claimed that she couldn't remember the details regarding Donald. She stated that she had just left her room when she saw him bleeding on the floor, and she immediately called 911. After answering a few more questions, she unexpectedly fell asleep during the interrogation. Donald died in the hospital a few hours later, prompting the police to start a murder investigation. Before detectives could proceed, Donald's daughters discovered that he had left a voicemail at 2:44 p.m. In the message, he asked them to call him back, and they heard a loud bang just as the message was sent. The daughters were shocked and confused when they learned of their father's death from the police. They were heartbroken to learn that these were their father's last words. After receiving their first lead, the police started investigating the crime scene and were taken aback to discover that CCTV cameras were monitoring the house. What shocked them even more was that the entire murder of Donald was captured on video. Rebecca was left alone with Donald after her son went to sleep at a friend's house. She picked up a gun and entered the living room while Donald was recording a voice message for his daughter. He was unaware of her presence until she fired the first shot. The bullet grazed his head and struck Rebecca's wedding portrait. In surprise and pain, he screamed and fell to the floor next to the couch. Rebecca returned to her room and changed into a t-shirt. She then returned to the living room and shot her husband, Donald, in the head. As blood poured across the room, she sat on the couch next to him as he died. She lit a cigarette and watched him bleed for 23 minutes before finally calling 911. The scene was so horrific that the footage was never made public. Surveillance videos clearly showed that it was a cold-blooded murder. When questioned, her story kept changing. Eventually, she claimed that Donald was planning to hire someone to kill her and make it look like a robbery gone wrong. On July 31st, while Donald was on the phone, Rebecca overheard the plan he was discussing. In a state of panic, she grabbed the gun, went into the living room, and fired, but she could not remember what happened after that. As police dug deeper into their story, they uncovered disturbing details about the couple's circumstances. Their home was filled with excessive drinking, creating an unhealthy atmosphere for raising children. The Rebecca expressed concern for her teenage son, who witnessed everything. Together, Donald and Rebecca were on a path of self-destruction, amassing not only alcohol but also a frightening collection of weapons. They seemed to drink constantly, leading to a concerning situation. Friends revealed that Donald had been controlling of Rebecca from the beginning of their relationship. He pressured her to quit her job at a strip club. He also frequently criticized and insulted her. He even forced Rebecca to get a tattoo of his name, claiming it was a way to mark her. In April 2006, after a night of drinking at a bar, Rebecca and Donald got into an argument that escalated into a physical fight. Donald began to violently beat Rebecca. A deputy sheriff from a neighboring county happened to witness the incident and decided to follow them, calling the police for assistance. The deputy reported seeing Rebecca trying to escape from Donald, who then approached her and struck her on the head. Rebecca fell to the ground, and Donald subsequently grabbed her and attempted to take her to a waiting taxi. At that moment, the police intervened and detained them. Rebecca had a bloody nose, scratches on her lips, and blood stains on her shirt. When the officer attempted to photograph her injuries, she turned away and gave him the middle finger. Although the officer witnessed the incident, Rebecca defended her husband, insisting that he had done nothing wrong and that she had simply tripped and fallen. She told the police they were wasting their time and that she would not leave him. Donald had a small cut on his cheek and around his right eye. He told the officer that he and Rebecca were having a normal conversation. He denied it was an argument, claiming she turned to face him and tripped, causing her face to hit his. Donald was arrested on assault charges but was released shortly afterward. He also denied any wrongdoing. In December 2006, police were called to the Donald home shortly after midnight by someone who reported a domestic dispute. The caller mentioned an argument between the couple, during which Donald broke a pool table and knocked it over. A witness noted that the couple frequently had arguments that became violent. When the officers arrived, they found the couple arguing in the dressing room. Donald was standing over her, yelling, while she sat on the floor in tears. Rebecca refused to explain why she was crying and even declined to give the police her name. She yelled at the officers to leave her house, which led to her arrest on suspicion of obstructing justice. By March 2011, the Donald had relocated to West Phoenix. The police arrived after someone triggered the alarm. Donald informed the police that his wife had injured her face. He was unsure who activated the alarm but suspected it was the dog. In the bedroom, the officers spoke with Rebecca, who gave her name. She looked at a female officer and whispered, "Help me." As is routine, the officers began asking questions to assess her situation. After a brief conversation, the officers concluded that Rebecca was in danger and arrested her husband on suspicion of domestic violence. When the officers told Rebecca that her husband had been arrested, she became angry and said, "You don't know what you just did to me," Rebecca cried. "He's going to kill me." The officers offered to take her to a relative's house or a shelter, but she refused. They left a domestic violence flyer on her bed before leaving. In the summer of 2012, Rebecca told her psychologist that her husband had become extremely paranoid and suspected that she was plotting against him. By that time, the Donald were living in a $400,000 home in the Willa area of downtown Phoenix. Rebecca mentioned that Donald had changed the locks, and only he had a key. She also noted that he had installed cameras throughout the house to monitor her. A subsequent investigation revealed that the surveillance camera system had been installed after their home had been burglarized, with cameras positioned both inside and outside the property. In late July 2012, Rebecca decided she wanted to leave her husband. She claimed he had broken her iPod, damaged her phone, and locked her inside the house. During a session with a psychologist, she expressed feeling trapped and hopeless. On the night of July 31, 2012, they hosted former neighbors with whom they had a good relationship. The neighbors noticed Rebecca was drinking heavily and voiced their concerns before leaving, which upset her husband. Rebecca claimed that she and her husband had argued that night. She said he threw her across the room, leaving her scared and having to reach for a weapon. The incident was not caught on surveillance cameras, however, police discovered footage that showed multiple instances of violence, both from Donald and sometimes from Rebecca. Their relationship was tumultuous, marked by intense emotions, conflict, and years of violent arguments. Surveillance cameras captured multiple instances of Donald pushing Rebecca to the ground, hitting her on the head, and occasionally choking her. On one occasion, he even grabbed her legs and threw her into the pool. After her arrest, Rebecca claimed she acted in self-defense. But it was clear that Rebecca had fired the shots. In a reduced sentence, Rebecca pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. During her trial, she admitted that she had been drinking that night and could not remember what happened afterward. While he lay bleeding, she sat and calmly smoked a cigarette. Moreover, the trial revealed undeniable evidence. A video of the incident was shown in court, leading the jury to convict Rebecca of first-degree murder. She received a life sentence in prison, with the possibility of parole in 20 years, making her eligible for release in 2032. After her sentence was announced, Rebecca expressed her sorrow. Rebecca was escorted out of the courtroom, trying to approach her son while repeatedly telling him that she loved him. She kept her eyes on her son until the door closed behind her. Custody of her son was granted to his maternal grandmother. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Farquharson family. At around 8 p.m. on September 4, 2005, a man emerged from the water near Lake Victoria in Australia, soaked and distressed. He flagged down a passing car, desperately seeking help. The man said that the car he was in, carrying 3 children, had crashed into a fence and fallen into the water. The man was later identified as Robert Farquharson, the children's father. Inside the submerged car were his 2-year-old son Bailey, 7-year-old Tyler, and 10-year-old Jai. Robert asked the driver to take him to the children's mother, who lived 8 kilometers from the lake. The driver complied and called emergency services at 000 to report the accident during the journey. As word spread, people flocked to the scene and some even dove into the water, hoping to rescue the children, but their efforts were futile. The car remained submerged and unreachable. Eventually, police, medical personnel, and rescuers arrived to assist. Robert explained to the police that while he had managed to escape the sinking car, he was unable to free the children, prompting him to seek help. His mobile phone had malfunctioned due to water damage, forcing him to stop a passing car for assistance. The search and rescue operation faced challenges due to darkness, and Robert could not pinpoint where the car had gone underwater. Although the water was cold, the divers continued their search for the car, aiming to help the children trapped inside. Time was critical, as the chances of survival diminished rapidly. It was essential to act quickly before the car filled with water. Around 2 a.m., divers recovered the bodies of the 3 children from the water. The car was about 30 meters from shore, submerged at a depth of 7.5 meters. Inside, the children were desperately trying to escape. They unbuckled their seatbelts, but tragically, they were unable to escape. Jai's body was found in the front door, while Tyler and Bailey were still in the back seat. Cindy, the boy's mother, was in shock after losing 3 sons in a flash. She was hospitalized and given sedatives to help her cope with her grief. Meanwhile, Robert was also hospitalized with hypothermia and minor injuries. The Farquharsons were well regarded in the community and were considered a model family. Cindy and Robert met in 1990. They welcomed their first child, Jai, in late 1994, their second, Tyler, in 1998, and eventually married in 2000. Bailey, their third child, was born 2 years later. Jai, the oldest brother, aspired to be a fireman or rescuer. On the day of the tragedy, he helped his younger brothers unbuckle their belts in an attempt to save everyone, but unfortunately, he was unable to do so. Tyler, the middle brother, is known for his playful and prankish nature, while the youngest, Bailey, is only 2 years old and is very attached to his brothers. The boy's parents had divorced several years before the tragedy. The children lived with Cindy, but Robert visited regularly and maintained open communication with them. The tragic day was also Father's Day, and the boys spent time with their father. Cindy gave Robert a set of pots and a framed photo of his sons as gifts for the occasion. Robert took the children to KFC for lunch, then they stopped at a store to buy a new baseball bat before going to their mother's house. On the way, an accident occurred. After recovering, Robert was questioned by the police. He claimed he was not speeding, but during the drive, he had a severe coughing fit that caused him to lose control of the car. The car crashed into a fence and ended up in the water, sliding several meters before starting to sink. The children in the car were screaming. Robert managed to surface to call for help and intended to go back to rescue the children, but he was unable to do so. A toxicology report found that Robert had not consumed alcohol or used illegal drugs on the day of the incident. He had just recovered from the flu and was suffering from a severe cough. Although the incident was ruled an accident, the police needed to conduct a thorough investigation. A memorial was set up on the shore of the lake, where people brought flowers, candles and toys in memory of the children. Robert felt guilty about the accident and sought forgiveness from his ex-wife. He expressed that he tried his best to save the children but was unable to do so. His family members supported him during this difficult time, and Cindy defended Robert, believing in his innocence. She accepted that the children's deaths were a tragic accident. Forensic experts at the accident scene were puzzled by the absence of skid marks or braking marks on the road, which were expected to be present. They later found that when the car was discovered, its ignition and headlights were off, and the rear doors were locked. This raised questions. How could this have happened? Could it be that the father intentionally did this instead of trying to save his children? On September 11th, Cindy and Robert were released from the hospital and were able to hold a burial for their boys. Approximately 600 people attended the ceremony, with nearly the entire community coming to offer their condolences. The local residents who supported the family during this tragic time were also mourning alongside the heartbroken parents, who were struggling to cope. Robert's car was taken for inspection to check its overall functionality, especially the brakes and steering system. There might have been a technical issue that caused the brakes to fail. Police continued their work at the lake, trying to piece together how the incident occurred and why, with the goal of making the area safer. They attempted to recreate the events using the same car, but their efforts were unsuccessful. The steering wheel did not turn far enough to the right for the car to slide into the lake. This led police to question Robert's account, and he was asked to come to the police station for further questioning. He repeated the same story but couldn't clearly explain why the car's ignition, heating, and headlights were off. There were no signs of skidding or braking on the road. Police offered him a lie detector test, which Robert agreed to, but he failed. Experts determined that reaching the water would require turning the steering wheel sharply to the right by 220 degrees. If Robert had merely lost control due to coughing, he wouldn't have made such a sudden turn. He would have just gone off the road and not into the water. All checks on the car showed it was in perfect working condition, with no issues with the brakes, steering, headlights, or ignition. Therefore, police believed the actions were deliberate. The case was referred to the Homicide Division, and a detailed investigation began. An autopsy on the boys revealed they drowned, but their bodies had numerous abrasions and bruises, suggesting they may have been injured before their deaths. 3 months later, Robert was arrested and charged with the murder of the boys. He was shocked by the accusations and insisted that he was innocent, claiming that it was a tragic accident. Soon after, a witness came forward, one of Robert's friends, who revealed that just days before the incident, Robert had expressed his desire to harm his children, then end his life as an act of revenge against his ex-wife. Because after the divorce, Cindy got everything: a nice house, a luxury car, money, and even she started dating another man and seemed happy, with plans to remarry. Robert was jealous of her, but at the time his friend did not believe he would do it. Robert later confessed to this friend that he had deliberately drowned their children as an act of revenge against his ex-wife. He was released on $200,000 bail before the trial because the judge considered the incident an accident and decided that he did not pose a threat to society. As part of his bail conditions, Robert was required to stay home and wear a tracking bracelet. The trial began in August 2007. During the trial, Robert's ex-wife Cindy expressed her belief that he did not intentionally kill their children. She characterized him as a devoted family man. Cindy found it hard to comprehend why Robert would harm their children, even if he were upset with her. However, she acknowledged that Robert had been unhappy with her new relationship and had previously said he wouldn't let the children live with her new partner or pay alimony. Cindy firmly believed that the incident was an accident. She recalled suggesting to Robert that he spend Father's Day with the children. She sent her sons off at 3 p.m., and their father picked them up, with the expectation that they would return home by 7:30 p.m. Around 8 p.m., she was shocked to find a soaked and frantic Robert at her door. After learning about the accident, Cindy's new partner, Stephen, quickly drove to the lake. He began diving in, searching for the car to rescue the children. Robert, accompanied by his lawyer, maintained that it was an accident. A local resident who was near the lake that day testified at the trial about Robert's behavior while he waited for the boys to be rescued. The witness noted that Robert seemed more focused on finding a cigarette than on his children, which surprised him. When asked why he wasn't more worried about his children, Robert did not respond and did not attempt to dive into the water to save them. Another driver who stopped to help also provided testimony. He noted that Robert did not ask him to call for help but instead wanted a ride to see his wife. By that time, Robert appeared to have accepted that the children were dead. The driver was confused because Robert wanted to see his wife instead of seeking help for the children. Although confused, the driver took Robert with him and gave him a phone to call for help. However, Robert refused, saying that it was too late and the children were dead. The driver later felt that Robert might be mentally unstable. Regretting his decision to follow Robert's wishes, the driver called the emergency services himself, wishing he had done more to save the children. A nearby police officer commented on Robert's lack of emotion, saying that he did not act like a father who had just lost 3 sons. In contrast, the children's mother appeared very confused, pulling her hair, crying and begging for help, while Robert was barely responsive. Cindy and Stephen, her new partner, joined the rescuers to help, while Robert didn't mention his cough, which he claimed had led to his loss of control, until 11 days later. During the trial, the doctor who treated Robert confirmed that Robert was indeed ill. Robert was coughing a lot and felt weak and lethargic. However, the doctor believed that the cough would not have caused Robert to turn the wheel so suddenly. After the divorce, Robert suffered from depression, mental instability, and personality disorder. He regularly saw a psychiatrist. On the morning before the tragedy, Robert told the psychiatrist that he had forgotten to take his antidepressants. The prosecution presented evidence that there were no skid marks or brake marks on the road, and that the back door was locked and the headlights were off, which could not have happened accidentally. The prosecution argued that Robert had tried to kill the children out of revenge against Cindy, primarily because he wanted to avoid paying her child support. The jury found these arguments convincing, and on October 5, 2007, they found Robert Farquharson guilty. He was sentenced to the maximum sentence of 3 life terms without the possibility of parole. In sentencing, the judge stated that Robert's actions had destroyed his entire family in revenge against Cindy and had also ruined his own life. Cindy, the children's mother, fainted after hearing the verdict and had to be rushed to the hospital because she did not expect the verdict to be like that. After the trial, she was very confused by the experts' opinions. That Robert had intentionally killed the children to get revenge on her. Cindy wanted to visit Robert in prison to understand the truth of what happened, but he refused to see her. Cindy sued her ex-husband, Robert, for pain and suffering as well as for the death of their 3 children. As a result, Robert was found guilty and ordered to pay her $225,000. Later, it was discovered that the friend who testified against Robert during the trial had a history of violence and multiple convictions, which raised doubts about his credibility. With this new information, Robert and his lawyer filed an appeal, which was accepted on December 17, 2009. Robert was released on bail of $200,000 on December 21. Due to errors in the judicial process, a new trial was scheduled, beginning in May 2010. During the trial, a new witness testified, a woman who said she was driving behind Robert's car near the lake. She described the car as moving at a normal speed before it suddenly swerved to the right multiple times. Inside the car, she saw 3 children, and she noted that Robert was purposefully guiding his boys toward the water. He did not attempt to brake or change direction. Most notably, Robert remained calm and did not cough while sitting behind the wheel. The woman drove away quickly and did not realize that Robert had driven his car into the water. She thought he would simply stop by the lake. She later learned about the tragedy on TV the next day and came to understand that Robert had intentionally drowned his children. She had been unable to contact anyone sooner because she was receiving cancer treatment in the hospital. After witness testimony, Cindy developed a deep hatred for Robert, believing that he had intentionally taken the lives of her children. She was convinced of his guilt and asked the court to sentence him to life in prison, ensuring that he would spend the rest of his life in prison. Cindy had Robert's name removed from her children's records and from their gravestones. On July 22, 2010, the jury again found Robert guilty and he was sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole. In 2010, Cindy married Stephen and they had 2 sons together. Sadly, Cindy passed away in May 2022 at the age of 50. Robert remains in prison, serving his sentence. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Amanda Perot. On February 3, 2020, Seth Perot called his boss, the sheriff, to report a tragic incident at his home. His wife had died and he needed help. When the police arrived, Seth had just gotten out of the shower. Inside the bedroom, they discovered the body of 44-year-old Amanda on the bed, shot in the head. Initially, the scene appeared to match Seth's description on the phone. Then forensic experts began combing the area and collecting evidence. Seth was taken to the police station to give a statement. He said that he and his wife, Amanda, were lying in bed when they got into an argument. During the argument, Amanda suddenly pulled out a gun and shot herself in the head. Seth said that he had no time to react and stop her. When questioned by police, he described their day before the tragedy. They had dropped their children off at school and had not been anywhere else until the incident. Seth appeared extremely upset, almost in tears, expressing regret for losing the woman he loved more than anything after 8 happy years together. Initially, Seth said he had not touched Amanda. However, he later said he had hugged her several times after the shooting. He struggled to remember whether he had touched the gun and repeatedly claimed that he was a good cop. The police asked him more questions, leading to increasing doubts about his credibility. They knew that Seth, who had come from another police department, had a bad reputation and was known for aggressive behavior at work. When Amanda's relatives heard about the tragedy, they rushed to the house and informed the police that Amanda would never act in such a way or leave her children with an abusive husband. They were convinced that Seth had killed Amanda and urged the police to investigate the possibility. Meanwhile, forensic experts thoroughly examined the crime scene and concluded that it was a homicide. Their findings were supported by the location of the body and the gun. A .380 caliber Smith & Wesson was discovered nearby, with a discarded magazine found next to her right side. A bullet was found in the chamber of the semi-automatic pistol. When the gun is fired, the spent cartridge case is ejected, and a new cartridge is loaded. Because there was a bullet in the chamber, the magazine should have been removed after the shot was fired. If the gun was functioning properly, the magazine could only be ejected by pressing a button, which would have had to be done after the shot. However, if the Amanda died immediately, who pressed the button? The weapon was tested and found to have no faults. Additionally, there was no blood on Amanda's hands or on the long sleeves of her shirt. The bedroom contained 20 miniature whiskey bottles, and there were no signs of forced entry or any intruders. The primary suspect was the Seth. He was a police officer trained to use a gun, and the murder was carried out with his service weapon. Police began investigating the couple's relationship more closely and discovered some interesting details. Amanda Perot was born in 1975 in Lawrenceville, Georgia, a small town with a population of about 29,000. Relatives described her as a cheerful and kind person, always willing to help others and devoted to her family. The Amanda had 2 children from her first marriage, which ended in a difficult divorce due to her ex-husband's abusive behavior. Amanda struggled to escape this toxic relationship. In 2011, after her divorce, Amanda met Seth online. At that time, Seth was seriously ill with cancer, unemployed, and living with his parents, who were supporting him financially. He loved communicating online, and when he discovered Amanda's profile, he felt intrigued. He contacted her and they started chatting. To Amanda, Seth seemed like the complete opposite of her ex-husband. He was sweet, polite, and kind. As their conversations continued, Amanda and Seth grew close and started considering a face-to-face meeting. Eventually, Seth's health improved, and his cancer went into remission. He invited Amanda to meet in person. And their date went well. They instantly liked each other and began dating. During this time, Amanda learns that Seth has a daughter from a previous marriage who lives with mother, and he is determined to fight for custody of the child. Amanda moved in with Seth's parents along with. They were pleased that Seth had finally found a partner and believed everything was going well. Amanda took on the responsibility of caring for Seth, which led her to drift away from her own family. 2 of her sisters noted that after the move, Amanda dedicated herself entirely to looking after Seth. She also worked and took care of her children, leaving her little time to connect with family and friends. It was a challenging period for Amanda, but she never complained. Seth insisted that Amanda quit her job to be with him all the time, and his fairly wealthy parents supported this decision. Over time, Amanda's relatives lost touch with her. She stopped attending family gatherings, missing Christmas and Thanksgiving. She also ceased to personally congratulate her relatives on their birthdays, choosing instead to do so only by phone. Amanda became focused entirely on Seth and the children, celebrating all holidays with his family. Seth then took Amanda's cell phone, saying she didn't need it because she was always home with him. Amanda didn't have a phone, so her family couldn't contact her. Seth controlled every aspect of Amanda's life and wouldn't let her leave the house alone. After 5 years together, Seth and Amanda secretly married on June 23, 2017. Only their children attended the wedding. They didn't invite anyone else or tell anyone about this important moment in Amanda's life. Many believe that Seth married Amanda primarily for his own interests. He was determined to gain custody of his daughter from his ex-wife, and to do this, he needed to formalize his relationship with Amanda. Many thought this was his true motivation for marrying her. Without this goal, he might not have married at all. Although Seth appeared happy with Amanda, he had complete control over her and was very persistent in getting his way. He spent months in court fighting for custody of his daughter. Eventually, he was successful and won full custody of his daughter, after which Seth took his daughter to live with them. Amanda had no say in family decisions and was completely submissive to his decisions. In 2018, Seth's father purchased a beautiful house for them near the lake, and the family moved in. Amanda remained a housewife, as Seth did not allow her to work. A year later, Seth secured a job as a patrolman with the Tenton Police Department. After Seth started his job, his relationship with Amanda deteriorated. He began drinking excessively after work. One night, he fell down the stairs while drunk and got hurt. This led him to misuse painkillers along with alcohol, causing him to become extremely irritable and aggressive. He often threatened Amanda physically. On January 28, 2020, after suffering another attack from her husband, Amanda escaped to a neighbor's house and called 911 for help. When the police arrived, Amanda showed them the bruises from the abuse. Their 3 children confirmed her story. Seth's 8-year-old daughter reported that she had heard screams and seen her father pushing and hitting Amanda. Terrified, she had hidden in the closet to avoid the violence. After Amanda fled, Seth discovered the children hiding and forced them to come out. They obeyed but were very frightened of him. Seth was then arrested and charged that evening. Amanda called her sister, asking for a ride the next morning because she was afraid to stay home, knowing that her husband would be released soon. The next morning, Seth was released on $1,500 bail and returned home. Amanda later called her sister back saying that she didn't need to come anymore because everything was fine. However, her sister was shocked, realizing how dangerous Seth was to Amanda and the children. She couldn't understand why Amanda continued to forgive him. Amanda's sister came to her house and tried to convince her to leave with the children and divorce Seth. Amanda was against this idea. Her sister then left. Seth was temporarily suspended during the investigation into allegations of domestic violence and child abuse. Amanda took part in the hearings related to Seth's case. When the judge asked if she wanted a restraining order against him, she declined, saying she had forgiven him. As a result, Seth was released, and they went home together. Just 5 days later, on February 3, 2020, Amanda was found dead. Police, after reviewing a history of conflict and domestic violence, concluded that Amanda's death was not an accident. They suspected Seth of shooting her. During questioning, Seth maintained his innocence, claiming that their argument was due to recent allegations of domestic violence. During the argument, she pulled out a gun and shot herself. The police questioned how Amanda could have accessed Seth's gun, given his strict nature and the control he had over her. Police later found a handwritten note on Amanda's nightstand in which she praised her husband and described his great character. In the note, she wrote, "Amanda Perot wants to retract her statement. Her husband has never raised a hand to hit her. She feels very bad for the humiliation she has caused him. She is willing to accept any punishment she deserves for her actions." However, Amanda's sister does not believe that Amanda would write such things about her husband. The handwriting on the note appears to be different from Amanda's usual style, raising concerns that she may not have written it herself, or that she wrote it under pressure or at the behest of her husband. Therefore, the handwriting appears unusual. Seth has a hard time explaining the bruises on Amanda's body. Police suspect that he coerced her into writing the letter to make her death appear voluntary, in an attempt to escape guilt. The investigation is ongoing, with police believing Seth shot his wife and actively gathering evidence against him. They have interviewed the couple's friends and family to uncover more about the history of domestic violence in their relationship. Neighbors reported hearing screams from the couple's house almost daily and often saw Seth intoxicated. The community was aware that the couple frequently argued, with Seth being the aggressor when he drank. Amanda, on the other hand, appeared to be a quiet and modest person, and neighbors never saw her drinking. There were multiple instances where neighbors witnessed Seth dragging Amanda by her hair in their driveway. Although they felt sympathy for her, no one called the police out of fear of Seth, who was a police officer himself. On the day Amanda died, the neighborhood was unusually quiet. There were no sounds coming from the house. The only witness to the events was Seth, whose testimony was not trusted during the investigation. It was revealed that just 20 minutes before Seth's call, a deputy police officer had shown up at their door with a summons for domestic violence. Video from the doorbell camera showed the officer approaching, introducing himself, and waiting for someone to answer. Although Seth heard noises inside, no one answered. The deputy police officer were puzzled by Seth's behavior, knowing that Seth was a police officer who knew the procedures. Seth only needed to hand over some documents, so the deputy police officer wondered why he was hiding and refusing to open the door. Initially, the deputy police officer thought that Seth might not be fully clothed, which could explain the lack of response. He turned his back to the door and asked Seth to simply hand over the documents without looking inside, but still no one responded. This was unusual. After waiting another 7 minutes, the deputy police officer left. They later speculated that when Seth saw the police at the door, he became frightened. Apparently, a shot was fired just before the deputy police officer arrived. After the deputy left, he took a few minutes to calm down and then called his sheriff on his cell phone. Police later discovered that Seth had lied about not leaving the house on the day of the murder. Police reviewed surveillance cameras from the area and the couple's bank card transactions, finding that they had gone to a store 10 miles from their home that day and purchased 20 bottles of liquor. More importantly, the cameras recorded what the Seth was wearing: a Pink Floyd t-shirt and black sweatpants. 4 hours later, when police arrived at the Peralt's home, Seth was wearing different clothes. A plain black t-shirt and the clothes he had worn to the store were found in a washing machine, which had been turned off. In addition, Seth was still wet from his shower. Police suspected that he may have tried to wash off gunpowder residue and blood that may have gotten on him during the shooting, but he had not started the washing cycle. A small smear of Amanda's blood was later found on his pants, and traces of gunpowder were discovered on Seth's left hand. Based on this evidence, the investigation resumed just 2 days after the tragedy on February 5 in 2020. Seth was arrested for the murder of Amanda Perot. He denied any involvement in her death and also refuted allegations of domestic violence. The couple's 3 children were interviewed by child psychologists, and all 3 reported that Seth frequently abused their mother in front of them. The day before Amanda's death, she urged the children not to speak to the police, warning them that Seth might lose custody of their daughter and could retaliate violently. The children lived in constant fear of him. Their testimonies were presented as evidence during the trial. Seth's daughter requested to move in with her mother, and this request was granted, while Amanda's other children stayed with her sister throughout the trial. On August 21, 2020, something unexpected occurred. The autopsy report was released. The state medical examiner concluded that Amanda Perot had shot herself, citing the absence of struggle signs and the burns on her skin from the gunshot. This finding shocked the prosecution, who disagreed with the forensic expert's assessment. The trial began on November 3, 2020, with the prosecution presenting all the evidence that Seth was guilty: gunpowder residue on his hands, blood on his unwashed clothes, discrepancies in the placement of Amanda's body in the gun, and most importantly, Seth's motive for killing his wife. Despite this evidence, Seth maintained his innocence. His attorney argued that changing clothes and showering were not important. Seth simply chose to shower during the day and made no attempt to hide anything. The bloodstain may have been from a previous incident where Amanda accidentally hurt herself. However, the presence of gunpowder on Seth's hands was unexplained. It was suggested he might have gotten it while at the police station. The lawyer pointed out that even the state medical examiner concluded Amanda shot herself, as there were no clear signs of a struggle. While burns on her body indicated she was shot from a close distance, the prosecutor claimed that Seth had given her alcohol and drugs, preventing her from defending herself. Amanda's phone had photos of her with a bruise under her eye and a split lip, as well as videos of her husband threatening her, which she had recorded secretly. In a message to her sisters, Amanda said, "Seth just choked she until I almost lost consciousness. He split she lip." The prosecutor noted that a gun magazine was found next to her right hand, while a firearm with a loaded cartridge was located about 1.5 meters away against the wall and ceiling. Blood was also found on the bedspread, with 2 cartridges present, suggesting that the crime scene had been staged. This was in contrast to Seth's claim that he had not touched or moved the body or the gun. The sister of the Amanda testified in court that Amanda had told her just days before the tragedy that if anything happened to her, it would be at the hands of her husband. Police chief reported that when he received the call about Amanda's death, Seth initially mumbled something incoherent before suddenly screaming. Only after he calmed down was he able to explain what had happened. Additionally, Seth's cellmate testified during the trial, claiming that Seth confessed to him about killing his wife. He described how Seth had given Amanda alcohol, sedatives, and painkillers on the day she died, which caused her to lose consciousness, after which he shot her. A toxicology report confirmed that Amanda had high levels of alcohol and drugs in her system at the time of her death. On February 25, 2022, after 2.5 hours of deliberation, the jury found Seth Perot, 45, guilty of murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Seth's lawyers were furious with the verdict, claiming that there was no direct evidence to prove his guilt. Following the verdict, Seth Perot's new legal team filed its first appeal, which was denied. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Kelly Lane. Kelly Lane was an Australian beauty and a champion water polo athlete. Despite her success, she faced a series of unfortunate events that led to tragedy, leaving many unanswered questions about her story. Born in 1975, Kelly grew up in a sports-oriented family. Her father, originally known as Bim, later became a police officer named Robert Lane. Her mother, Sandra, worked in a medical institution and coached water polo. Kelly had a brother named Morgan. The family was affluent and lived in a prestigious area of Sydney, Australia. Kelly was a golden child, attending Lee High School and later Mayclara. After graduating, she enrolled at the University of Newcastle to study art and then attended the Australian College of Physical Education. During this time, she started her sports career, working as a physical education teacher and coach at a girls' high school. Following in her mother's footsteps, Kelly became a highly skilled water polo player, which made her famous in her city. Her parents were proud of her accomplishments and were themselves respected professionals. Kelly took part in almost all public events, especially sports-related ones, and had a bright future ahead. Her mother was both her coach and manager, dedicating a lot of time to Kelly's career. Initially, Sandra personally handled her daughter's training, but later Kelly was coached by a more experienced trainer. Kelly dedicated herself completely to sports. Her parents were supportive and actively helped her progress in her chosen path. Despite her hectic schedule, Kelly was calm and reserved. She had a fit, athletic body and natural beauty, seldom wearing makeup. Her attractiveness and sociable nature made her popular even in high school. In 1992, when she was finishing her studies, Kelly met Aaron. They had a lot in common and their relationship developed into a romance. At the age of 17, she unexpectedly became pregnant while still in school and, not ready to become a mother, she chose to have an abortion. Aaron supported her decision. In order to continue her athletic career, Kelly kept her pregnancy and abortion a secret, never telling her parents. By early 1994, Kelly's relationship with Aaron ended due to frequent arguments. She then began an affair with a married man and became pregnant at 19, despite using contraception. She did not plan to keep the child and decided to have another abortion. This decision was made in secret, as the father did not want the child either. Kelly sought a different clinic for more confidentiality but was initially refused because the pregnancy was too advanced for a safe procedure. She had to convince the doctors to perform the surgery and they finally agreed. At that time, she was in her 20th week of pregnancy. Remarkably, during 5 months of intense training, no one noticed her condition because athletes often endure challenging situations. Kelly, determined to participate in the Olympic Games, did not show weakness or ask for special treatment. Her athleticism helped her maintain a fit appearance, aided by loose clothing. Sometimes, a woman's body structure can conceal a pregnancy until later stages, as was the case with Kelly. Although the abortion was traumatic, she felt relieved to have resolved the situation and continued with her life, pursuing sports and forming new relationships. In 1995, Kelly started dating a new boyfriend named Duncan, and they were together until 1998. Duncan professed his deep love for Kelly and expressed a desire to marry her. Both were athletes who enjoyed parties and entertainment. During this time, Kelly became pregnant again with an unwanted child. After her previous traumatic abortion, she was reluctant to seek medical help. Despite being pregnant, Kelly still chose to compete in sports and compete in the World Cup. Practicing a demanding sport like water polo while pregnant is no easy feat, yet Kelly managed it. Despite the intense physical demands, no one noticed the strain she was under, not even her boyfriend on the team, as Kelly kept her pregnancy a secret. To maintain her privacy, she wore a towel to the pool and only removed it before entering the water, avoiding showing her figure in a swimsuit by wearing loose clothing. Her boyfriend remained unaware but later recalled that she never let him touch her stomach and had limited contact with him. Around the 7th month of her pregnancy, an unexpected situation occurred. During practice, a swimmer in the water next to Kelly noticed her protruding belly and suspected that she might be pregnant. The swimmer shared her suspicions with her coach. Kelly's coach then asked her about it. Kelly firmly denied being pregnant, and the coach, upon seeing her small belly, was reassured. Kelly continued to lie, fearing that it would ruin her athletic career. Kelly was participating in a local water polo event. During the event, she felt unwell and was taken to hospital on a stretcher, where she gave birth to a baby girl. She experienced severe contractions, which likely began during the competition. After the birth, Kelly abandoned the baby, who was later adopted. She even named another man as the father. Despite this, Kelly was forced to stay in the hospital with the baby until she was discharged. She did not inform her family about the birth, telling her parents that she was with friends, which they believed. No one was worried about her, allowing her to carry out her plan. On her birthday, she managed to leave the hospital to have a drink with friends. She became intoxicated. After returning from the party, at the beginning of the year, Kelly began working as a teacher at a private school. She also continued her water polo career, representing Australia at the World Championships in Canada. Kelly performed well and won a silver medal. When Kelly turned 21, she became pregnant again. Despite being pregnant, Kelly maintained a romantic relationship with Duncan, who was deeply in love and considering marriage. However, she chose to keep her pregnancy a secret from her family, friends, and Duncan, even though they had been together for a long time and he was eager to marry her. Throughout her pregnancy, Kelly did not show any physical signs. She remained slim and did not alter her lifestyle. She regularly consumed alcohol, attended parties, engaged in intimate relationships, and continued to exercise vigorously, just as she always had. In a small suburb where everyone knew each other, Kelly faced the challenge of being the subject of gossip during her pregnancies. Many people envied her and suspected something was wrong, fueling rumors about her condition. This suspicion was partly due to changes in her behavior, like wearing towels or loose-fitting clothes. While those close to her didn't notice anything unusual, some outsiders found it odd. Regardless, Kelly consistently denied any rumors about being pregnant, insisting she was fine, and no one challenged her assertions, as there was no proof to suggest otherwise. In April 1996, Kelly's relationship with Duncan began to deteriorate. He moved to a different area and bought a house, creating distance between them. Later, Kelly discovered that he had cheated on her with one of the athletes on her team. Although this betrayal hurt her, Kelly chose to forgive him and work to save their relationship. On September 12, in the year 1996, Kelly secretly gave birth to her second daughter, whom she named Tegan. She had informed her relatives that she would be spending the weekend with friends, but instead, she went to the hospital to give birth. Kelly chose a hospital far from home, reducing the risk of encountering someone she knew. For the first time during her pregnancy, she used her real name and date of birth at the hospital. She even considered keeping the baby. However, she later changed her address and phone number. At the time, it was relatively easy to hide or change personal information. Australians had access to free health care, including anonymous services if needed. Unlike her previous children, baby Tegan felt the warmth of her mother, indicating that a bond had formed between them. Kelly spent time with her daughter, breastfeeding, bathing and sleeping together. During her labor, she consulted with doctors about her future as a mother. Unlike before, she tried to avoid or abandon her child. Just 2 days after giving birth, Kelly and her daughter were discharged from hospital. However, she missed an important test required in Australia, which involves taking blood from the baby's heel for newborn screening. The early discharge was necessary because of a lack of beds in the hospital. Both Kelly and her daughter felt well and were quickly discharged to make room for other patients. On the day she was discharged from the hospital, Kelly left home between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m., and no one saw the baby again. She returned to her parents' house around 3 p.m. without her daughter. Since no one knew she had given birth, there were no suspicions or questions about her absence. That evening, she met her boyfriend and went out to a family wedding where she acted normally as if nothing had happened. Her behavior raised no concerns among her relatives. For the next 10 years, no one suspected the existence of Tegan. The baby had vanished during the time between leaving the hospital and arriving at her parents' home. Since only Kelly and the doctors were aware of the baby's existence, no one searched for Tegan. The doctors did not follow up on the baby's fate, so the information remained hidden. At the end of 1998, Kelly became pregnant again due to her carelessness. By the time she discovered her pregnancy, she had already broken up with her boyfriend, Duncan. This time, she decided not to tell anyone and wanted to have an abortion. In early February 1999, she visited the new abortion clinic in Queensland. However, her request for an abortion was denied because she arrived at the clinic in the 25th week of her pregnancy, which was too late for the procedure. She faced similar refusals at other clinics, leaving her with no choice but to give birth. Kelly secretly gave birth in the hospital and immediately put the baby up for adoption. By that time, the laws regarding adoption had changed, making the process more complicated. She spoke briefly with a social worker about her lack of documents. Kelly lied, claiming it was her first birth, and provided her real name but gave false information about her contact details and address. She also stated that she did not know who the child's father was. Because of the incorrect information she provided, the social worker's job became much more difficult. When the organization that assists new mothers reviewed her case, they realized they had been misled and that this was not Kelly's first birth. They began searching for her to discuss the situation, as they lacked the necessary information to legally finalize the adoption of the child. The adoption process in the country has changed significantly, but Kelly was not aware of this. Consequently, the social workers handling the adoption paperwork performed a thorough background check on the child's biological mother. As they investigated her history and life, they uncovered numerous inconsistencies and falsehoods. They investigated Kelly's situation and found that she likely had a daughter named Tegan, whom she had given birth to several years earlier. Kelly did not abandon Tegan, she left the hospital with her. However, the only information available was that Tegan was born in a hospital near Bern. After leaving the hospital, there was no communication from Kelly. She never Tegan took for checkups, vaccinations, or visits to the pediatrician. For 3 years, there were no updates about the child, and Kelly's biological mother denied that Kelly had ever given birth. This situation raised alarms, leading social services employees to reach out to Kelly's mother. She confidently insisted that they were mistaken and claimed she had no grandchildren. However, the social workers suspected something was wrong and contacted the police, who began their investigation. Meanwhile, Kelly went about her life, unaware that the police were getting closer to uncovering her secrets. In 2000, on her 25th birthday, it was revealed that she was pregnant again, and this time she chose to keep the child. For the first time, she shared this news with her family and boyfriend. This decision was likely influenced by Kelly's sports career, as she was aging and had stopped competing. Kelly tried to work as a coach and present herself as a respectable mother, which was beneficial for her at that time. However, she was unaware that the investigation into the disappearance of baby Tegan was intensifying. Later, police reached out to her regarding her previous pregnancies, and Kelly was summoned for questioning. This time, she could not evade it, as police had already gathered extensive information about her. Kelly admitted to 5 pregnancies, including those that were terminated, between the ages of 17 and 24. She had 2 abortions and gave birth to 3 children, all without her family's knowledge. She stated that Tegan was born from a secret relationship with an older man named Andrew Morris. Kelly met Andrew on Vis Beach Street, where he worked in finance, and they connected in a bar. Their relationship was short-lived. When Kelly discovered she was pregnant and shared the news with Andrew, he was excited and awaited the birth. She claimed that after the baby was born, Andrew took Tegan but did not clarify where they would live. Kelly was unable to provide further details about Andrew. Nevertheless, a portrait was created based on her description for the investigation. The police began by checking their records, with the initial goal of finding the baby's father, Andrew, to find out where the child was. The police were stumped because they could not find any men matching Kelly's description. The potential matches were either too young or too old, and no one by that name lived on Bibbich Street, which cast doubt on Kelly's story. They eventually discovered an Andrew Morris, who had previously been in a relationship with Kelly, but that was years before her child was born. When the police contacted him, he confirmed that he had not seen Kelly for a long time and did not have any children with her. He had moved away a long time ago and had never lived at the address Kelly had provided. A month later, the investigation hit a temporary pause because there were no new leads on the child. However, a new police took over the case, and Kelly was called in for questioning again. She recounted the same story she had shared with the previous police, but some details had changed, and which the new police noticed. For instance, the father's last name had suddenly shifted from Andrew Morris to Andrew Norris. With a friendly smile, Kelly claimed she might have made a mistake during the earlier questioning and now remembered the correct last name, which confused the police. They directly asked her if she had killed her daughter. Kelly was surprised and denied it, asking to stop the audio recording of the interrogation. She was clearly distressed, mainly worried about how discussing her pregnancy might impact her career. However, there wasn't enough evidence to charge her, so the Kelly was released, and the investigation continued. Police, after considerable effort, were unable to locate Andrew Norris. However, they were unable to find any men matching Kelly's description, nor were there any children resembling Tegan enrolled in schools or kindergartens in the Minley area or surrounding communities. Police sifted through some 86,000 birth records in an attempt to identify potential adoptive parents for the child, but they found no new leads. Despite Kelly's increasing dishonesty, she continued to mislead the police. She said she saw Tegan 1-year-old in mid-1997, but no one could confirm her claim. Despite this, the police remained optimistic and continued their investigation. They contacted Kelly's ex-boyfriend, Duncan, as her relationship with him coincided with the clandestine relationship that led to Tegan's birth. Duncan maintains that he did not know about Kelly's affair. Duncan suspected that Kelly was pregnant, but she never mentioned it to him. He noticed that she never let him touch her belly, though he didn't think much of it at the time. They lived apart and only saw each other occasionally. He willingly agreed to provide his DNA for testing. The results showed that he was not the biological father of Kelly's first or third child, as both were adopted by other families. Unfortunately, the police did not have DNA samples from the missing baby, so they couldn't confirm if Duncan was the father of Tegan. Connecting all the data to confirm Tegan's existence was a challenge because information about the mother and baby was incomplete and inaccurate, making the investigation even more difficult. While the police worked to solve the mystery and find the Tegan, Kelly continued her life without concern. During this time, rumors spread around town that Kelly had multiple abortions, had children, and abandoned them. These rumors damaged her coaching career and damaged her reputation. Kelly eventually gave birth to a baby girl, whom she chose to keep, and she introduced her to all her relatives. In 2004, to help restore her reputation, she married the father of her fourth child. The police were unable to get any information about Tegan's father, Andrew Norris. Kelly frequently changed her story, which caused the police to lose confidence in her. The case stalled and they offered Kelly a deal. If she pleaded guilty to the child's murder and revealed where the body was buried, she would not face any charges and could avoid jail time. Despite these terms, Kelly maintained her innocence, claiming that she did not kill the child. She claimed that the child was still alive and suggested that both the child's and the father's names may have been changed, or that they may have left the country and are now untraceable. She believed that this was the reason why the police had been unable to locate them. The police found the scenario unlikely. Why would Andrew change both his name and Tegan's if he hadn't kidnapped her? He could have simply taken his daughter away from her mother and updated the necessary paperwork, enrolling her in a nursery, school, or hospital. Why did he remain in hiding for so many years? There is no clear reason for this. The situation was further complicated by a ban on sharing information about the case, which prevented police from seeking help from the media or the public. When Kelly declined a plea bargain and police failed to investigate for years, they concluded that Tegan was dead and the case was treated as a murder. They also deemed Andrew to be a fictitious person. However, there was no solid evidence supporting these claims. Despite the absence of direct evidence or testimony against Kelly, she was charged with Tegan's murder on November 17, 2009. Kelly maintained her innocence, and the case was referred to court. The prosecution claims that Tegan's murder occurred on September 14, 1996, the day Kelly was discharged from the hospital. Shortly after leaving, the baby went missing. Kelly had very little time to commit the crime and dispose of the body. To protect her social status and image, Kelly hid her pregnancy and discarded the baby. She returned home the same day as if nothing had happened, met her boyfriend, and went to celebrate a relative's wedding. During the trial, Kelly maintained her innocence. Her first boyfriend, Aaron, supported her and they rekindled their relationship after her divorce. He shared that it was difficult for them to decide to terminate her pregnancy the first time, and it was a difficult healing process for Kelly, leading him to believe that she was not capable of murder. However, he did not know that she later had another abortion and gave birth to the children she abandoned. In front of the jury, the prosecutor had no concrete evidence, witnesses, or bodies. Only circumstantial evidence against her. Prosecutors described Kelly as a dangerous, manipulative person who would do anything to get what she wanted. Her ability to abandon her children raised suspicions about her capacity to kill. A psychiatrist confirmed that Kelly displayed narcissistic traits and was adept at playing the victim. The trial lasted 4 months and was complicated. Despite the uncertainty of the indictment, the jury found Kelly Lane guilty, not of murdering Tegan, but of perjury. The verdict was handed down on December 13, 2010. The trial reconvened on April 15, 2011, when Kelly confessed to killing Tegan. She was sentenced to 18 years in prison. As a mother unable to care for her many children, she began her sentence in prison, with all of her appeals being rejected. During the trial, Kelly displayed no emotions, appearing indifferent to her baby's fate, which likely influenced the jury's decision. After entering prison, she broke up with Aaron but continued to send him love letters. Meanwhile, Aaron had begun dating someone else. This new girlfriend requested in a reply letter that Kelly stop contacting them, which angered Kelly. In response, she sent letters to Aaron's new girlfriend and asked her friends to harass her. Kelly's cellmates joined in, insulting Aaron's new girlfriend on social media. The woman, tired of being harassed, decided to end her relationship with Aaron. Kelly, 48, is currently serving a prison sentence but will soon be eligible for parole. She maintains her innocence and insists that her daughter is still alive. Kelly's parents fully support her and believe the court's decision was unfair due to a lack of evidence linking Kelly to the child. In an interview, Kelly Lane revealed that she hid her pregnancy to avoid embarrassing her parents. She said that she had taken birth control pills incorrectly multiple times, leading to unwanted pregnancies. New, alarming information has emerged in connection with the case. On May 12, 2023, a taxi driver contacted the police and provided a tip. He revealed that on the day Kelly was discharged from the hospital, he had picked her and her baby up. During the ride home, Kelly asked him to stop the car. She then got out and left the baby on the side of the road. Although the driver testified to this, he did nothing at the time. After dropping Kelly off at home, he was racked with guilt and decided to go back to check on the baby. When he arrived, he saw a woman who said she would take care of the baby, but he left without any information about her. The police attempted to verify this account, but they could not find any confirmation or anyone else who had seen the woman. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Yoselin Ortega. Yoselin Ortega was born in 1962 in the Dominican Republic as the youngest of 8 siblings. Her family was relatively wealthy, and her parents owned a wine cellar. She did not encounter any difficulties until her teens, when a sister of hers suddenly died from a brain aneurysm. This thing deeply affected her. She did not leave the house for about a year and suffered from depression, missing her sister. During this time, she began hearing voices urging her to harm others, but she confided only in a few sisters, asking them to keep it secret. For many years, almost no one knew about this, not even her parents, who noticed some odd behavior but attributed it to grief and depression over her sister's death. Yoselin continued with her life, resisting the voices and not harming anyone. After finishing school, she attended university to study accounting. Despite her struggles, but she graduated in 1985. She then decided to move to New York, where one of her sisters lived. After that, she and her sister started living together, working together to cover expenses. Eventually, Yoselin met a man and started a relationship with him, marrying in 1995. The following year, they had a son named Jesus. However, after their child was born, the relationship between the couple became worse even though they tried to save it. In 1999, Yoselin and her husband are divorced, leaving her alone with a young child in New York, where the cost of living is very high. Faced with a lot of financial difficulties, so she decided to send her 4-year-old son, Jesus, for grandparents to take care of. Then she returned to the United States, where she can earn more money for herself and her child. Yoselin lived with her sister, and they supported each other by working together in a factory and taking part-time cleaning jobs. She kept in regular contact with her parents and son, calling them almost every day. In 2004, Yoselin became a U.S. citizen. After saving enough money, Yoselin returned to her homeland in March 2008 to raise her son. Things were going well until April 2008, when her best friend Celine tragically ended her life on a balcony. This news plunged Yoselin into depression, making her extremely paranoid. She did not leave the house and forbade her son to go to school. Whenever she heard noises outside, like a dog barking, she will hide under the bed and force her son to hide with her. As time passed, the situation improved. Jocelyn regained her composure, and her fears and worries faded away. She returned to work in the USA with her sister, leaving her son with her parents. Eventually, she met the affluent Krim family, who were looking for a nanny for their children. Kevin Krim, the head of the family, was a Harvard graduate, and his wife, Marina, graduated from the University of Southern California. They met at an Italian restaurant through friends and immediately hit it off. They got married in 2003. Marina and Kevin's first daughter, Lucia, was born in 2006, followed by their second daughter, Nessie, in 2009. When Marina was pregnant with her third child, the family relocated from California to New York due to Kevin's job. He was offered the position of Chief Executive Officer at Symbian. Previously, he worked in senior roles at Bloomberg and Yahoo. The family settled in one of Manhattan's finest neighborhoods, Upper West Side. Marina stays at home to do housework and take care of the children, but she later started a blog to document their daily lives as a personal hobby. The second daughter, Nessie, had health issues that required Marina's full attention. As a result, Marina began to have difficulty doing housework and had no time to take her children to extra classes like dancing or swimming. Additionally, she was in the late stages of pregnancy, making it difficult for her to manage anything. Her husband, Kevin, was frequently away on business trips and couldn't assist her, so they decided to hire a nanny for help. Marina and Kevin began searching for a nanny. At the dance studio Marina attended with her children, they met Jocelyn's sister, Celia, housekeeper for another family. Celia introduced Jocelyn to them and sent her younger sister's resume. Impressed by Jocelyn's experience with children, they contacted Jocelyn's previous employer and received a positive recommendation. Then, they invited Jocelyn for an interview and immediately liked her. She was sociable, smiling, and friendly. They decided to hire her as a part-time nanny. She came to their home after lunch and helped with the children until the evening. However, the entire story about the resume was fabricated. Jocelyn has no experience with childcare, unlike her sister, Celia. However, she needed a good job, and when an opportunity arose to earn a decent salary of $500 a week, Celia helped her create a resume. Despite her lack of experience, but Jocelyn excelled in the job. She got along well with the children, and there were no issues for about 2 years. Unfortunately, the Krim family could not have anticipated the tragedy that followed. Jocelyn appeared to be a kind and trustworthy woman, and the Krims believed their children were completely safe with her. This gave Marina free time to teach at a drawing school, her hobby, and continue blogging. The nanny Jocelyn treated the family's children as if they were her own, often joking that she had not one son, but 4 children. The children loved her in return, giving her drawings and becoming attached to her. The youngest son of the Krim family, Leo, couldn't even fall asleep without her. Marina was very cautious. She rarely left Jocelyn alone with the children, she doing so only in cases of extreme necessity. Usually, Marina was always with the children, and Jocelyn just assisted. Even when Marina left the house, she asked her relatives to keep an eye on Jocelyn. According to Celia, Jocelyn was happy with her job as a nanny. She earned a good salary for part-time work and received gifts, including expensive ones. Krim family even bought her plane tickets to the Dominican Republic so she can visit loved ones. They became so close to Jocelyn that in February 2012, they all went on vacation together to the Dominican Republic. There, they met Jocelyn's family, spent a night at her family's house, enjoyed the wonderful vacation, and gave her family many gifts. Krim family also helped Jocelyn's grown-up son, Jesus, move to New York to be closer to his mother. They bought 17-year-old Jesus an iPad for school, let him stay with them, and paid him well just for walking their 2 dogs. Although he had graduated from school in his home country, but Jesus had to repeat the 11th grade in the US under a different American program at a regular school. When he wasn't accepted, Jocelyn had to arrange for him to attend a private school, which was expensive for her. She was very protective of her son and didn't let him go outside unless necessary. She made him hide under the bed during loud noises, as he did in childhood, and when he went to school, she would to follow him secretly to ensure nothing happened to him. In April 2012, Jocelyn faced difficulties when she was evicted from the Bronx apartment she shared with her son. She had invested heavily in the housing, but the landlord evicted them. She was forced to move back in with her 3 sisters and their families, totaling 6 more people. The living situation was overcrowded and cramped. Jocelyn asked the Krim family for a raise so she could afford separate housing. They agreed to pay her more if she also cleaned their house for 5 hours a week. She accepted, but for the first time in a long time, she again had financial difficulties because she had to raise her son and pay the rent alone. Despite a decent income, her expenses were still too high. This situation stressed Jocelyn to sell jewelry and cosmetics to neighbors for extra money. Initially, she was successful, but when she gave cosmetics to a friend to sell, the friend disappeared without paying her back. This left she with a significant debt, forcing her to take on more work. She started cooking rice and preparing chicken dishes to sell. The extra workload exhausted her. She complained to her loved ones, saying the Krim family should pay her to babysit, not to clean and do housework. She felt that their family was so rich, they should just give her a raise without additional duties, and she was angry with them. Marina knew that Jocelyn needed money and began introducing her to friends and acquaintances to work as a nanny. When new clients started reaching out, Jocelyn became upset with Marina. She felt that taking on more work would leave her with less time to spend with her son. Her frustration grew daily. During these months, she lost a lot of weight and appeared tired and worn out. Once a cheerful and happy woman, she became tired and disillusioned with life. She began to have hallucinations, had trouble sleeping. Celia noticed that she started praying frequently at home, reading religious magazines because she saw demons, and began visiting a psychologist. But she hid all this from the Krim family, fearing she might lose her good job. On October 25, 2012, Jocelyn arrived at the Krim family's house at 3 p.m. Marina met Jocelyn at the door, as she was leaving with Nessie for a swimming lesson. She instructed Jocelyn to pick up Lucia from school and take Lucia's to ballet. Then Jocelyn had to go home to put Leo to bed. In the end, they planned to meet at Lucia's ballet class and return home together. Jocelyn and Leo picked up Lucia from school as planned but did not take Lucia to ballet lessons. Instead, they went for a walk in the park, ate ice cream, and then returned home. That day, Jocelyn first spoke to the janitor of the apartment building where the Krim family lived. She asked if Marina had returned home, but the concierge said no. Then, she, Lucia and Leo took the elevator to the apartment and ran into a neighbor. Just half an hour later, a tragedy occurred. Around 5 p.m., Marina and Nessie went to Lucia's ballet class to pick up Lucia. Little girl was supposed to be there with Jocelyn. However, Marina found out that little girl did not come to class. Concerned, Marina rushed back to her Upper West Side apartment in New York. On the way, she tried calling Jocelyn, but Jocelyn didn't answer. Marina initially thought no one was home and that Jocelyn might be out with the children in the park. She went to the concierge to ask if he had seen Jocelyn and the children. The concierge told her that they had recently returned to the building and they may be in the apartment. Marina and Nessie went back to the apartment and began to search each room. When Marina entered the bathroom, she was met with a horrific sight. Her two children, Lucia and Leo, lay lifeless on the floor, covered in blood, and Jocelyn sitting next to them holding a bloody kitchen knife. Seeing Marina's reaction, Jocelyn stabbed herself in the throat twice. Marina got scared. She rushed out of the apartment with Nessie, screaming. The neighbors heard Marina's heart-wrenching screams, and the building's security calmed her down before calling 911 and emergency services. When the New York Police Department officers arrived, they found a horrific scene in the Krim family's apartment. Two small children, Lucia and Leo, lay in the bathtub with knife wounds, Marina beside them, overcome with grief and horror. The nanny Jocelyn lay on the floor, bleeding and in critical condition. Doctors found Jocelyn, Lucia, and Leo still alive and rushed them to the hospital. Tragically, Lucia and Leo did not survive. They were pronounced dead on arrival. Lucia was 6 years old, and her brother Leo was 2 years old. The nanny, 50 years old Jocelyn Ortega, survived. She was put into a coma and underwent surgery. She had cut her hands and neck with such force that she broke her cervical vertebrae. Marina was in shock and unable to provide any information to the police, so they gave her a sedative. Her husband, Kevin, who was returning from a business trip, received a frantic voicemail from Marina, but couldn't understand what she was saying. He only knew that something was wrong with the children. When he arrived at the airport, police met him and delivered the devastating news. He fainted and was given first aid before being taken to the hospital to be with Marina. They were overcome with grief and struggled to comprehend how their nanny, who had been caring for their children for 2 years and was considered a member of the family, could commit such a heinous act. A neighbor reported seeing Jocelyn with Lucia and Leo in the elevator just 30 minutes before the tragedy. Lucia and Leo seemed happy and playful, while Jocelyn appeared emotionless and detached. However, the neighbor didn't think much of it, as Jocelyn had behaved similarly in the past. Other nannies in the area, who often helped each other, barely knew Jocelyn, as Jocelyn was very withdrawn and didn't communicate with anyone. They considered her strange. The autopsy revealed Lucia and Leo suffered a horrific death, with nearly beheaded bodies. Lucia suffered more than 30 stab wounds and cuts, indicating that little girl had fought fiercely for her life, leading to severe blood loss. Her younger brother, Leo, had 5 stab wounds to the neck, and his throat was cut from behind. There was no doubt Jocelyn was responsible for the murder. Detectives began to investigate her background in detail. Jocelyn was hospitalized for a week and she was saved. When she regained consciousness, she could only communicate through gestures. She only asked about her family, but she said nothing about the murdered children or the Krim family. Later, when Jocelyn could speak, detectives interviewed her on November 3rd. She did not confess to the murder, but she expressed feelings of resentment towards Krim's family because they often reprimanded her. She refused to have a lawyer during the interrogation. She said she was in the bathroom at the time of the incident, and she denied responsibility for causing the injuries that led to the deaths of Lucia, 6, and Leo, 2. In addition, she said that the children's mother, Marina, knew why this happened. On November 13th, Jocelyn Ortega was charged with the first-degree murder of the children, but she denied her guilt and hired a lawyer. As New York had abolished the death penalty, so she faced life imprisonment. Jocelyn was given a psychiatric examination and psychiatrists found her to be sane and able to appear in court. During the proceedings, Jocelyn declined a plea bargain from the prosecution, which offered her a 30-year sentence in exchange for a guilty plea, allowing her potential release at around 80 years of age. However, she chose not to explain the incident and motives behind the crime, opting instead to be represented by a lawyer. The lawyer argued that her actions were due to her mental illnesses. She broke down and lost control when she harmed Lucia and Leo. 2 psychiatrists for Jocelyn testified that she heard voices, including satanic ones, telling her to harm herself and the children. They stated that she had experienced hallucinations since her teenage years in the Dominican Republic, but her condition had not been diagnosed or treated. Before she was arrested for murder, several family members and friends noted that Jocelyn's behavior had changed in the weeks leading up to the crime. She said she saw demons and shadows of people haunting her. She frequently cried and prayed for the demons to leave her alone. Shortly before the murders, she threw pots and pans at the pool and kitchen walls to drown out the voices in her head, and sometimes banged her head against the wall to drive the demons away. Jocelyn's sisters blamed the Krim family for the tragedy, accusing them of exploiting she, not allowing her adequate rest, failing to notice signs of mental illness, and leaving her alone with the children. In court, a psychotherapist who had seen Jocelyn testified that he did not find any signs of mental disorder in her, only anxiety and mild depression due to concerns about her son. A recording of her conversation with a psychologist was played, confirming that she did not mention hearing voices or experiencing other symptoms of psychosis. The possibility of Jocelyn having a mental illness was dismissed. A psychiatrist, called by the prosecution, assumed she was angry and was faking psychosis. A relative of Jocelyn mentioned that she envied the Krim family because they could provide for their children in ways she could not, and she had to send her son to live with his grandparents when he was only 4 years old. The defense argued that tensions had arisen between Jocelyn and the Krim family. Besides taking care of the kids, she was also paid to clean their apartment and do odd jobs, which she was reluctant to do due to an allergy to cleaning products. She also disliked being asked by Marina to work for other families. On one occasion, Marina asks her to look after another family's child, while their nanny is on sick leave. She agreed, but the next day she refused to go to the other family. Marina confronted her about this near the school, in front of strangers, making she feel uncomfortable. Afterward, she sat in the park and cried. She believed that Marina intended to humiliate her in front of others. Tensions between the Krim and Jocelyn continued to rise. They were unhappy with her work in the weeks leading up to the murder and had warned her that if she did not improve her performance, she would have to find another job. In particular, Marina felt that she did not spend enough time interacting with the children and fed them unhealthy food. The day before the murder, Marina did not say goodbye to she, which made she very angry and upset. Jocelyn was upset with the Krim family due to a constant lack of money. She also disliked the frequently changing work schedule, which sometimes caused her to miss doctor's appointments. Prolonged dissatisfaction, along with mental disorder, made she increasingly angry, something she could not control. Without realizing what she was doing, she committed murder, her lawyer said. However, the prosecutor argued that the crime was carefully planned in advance. The day before the crime, Jocelyn returned home, took medicine for a headache, talked to her sister Celia, and asked her to care for Jesus as if little boy were her own son. Celia agreed without understanding what Jocelyn meant. On the day of the murders, Jocelyn ensured her son got to school safely and said goodbye to little boy before heading to work. She left Celia an envelope containing important personal documents such as her passport, driver's license, bank cards, insurance certificate, and some cash. She also attached a paper bag with family memorabilia, photographs, and her jewelry to her son's room door. The prosecutor believed this was her way of saying goodbye to her family, she knowing she wouldn't return. She also deliberately did not take Lucia to ballet lessons. The prosecution argued that Jesus' move to the United States triggered her, increased her anxiety, depression, and guilt, so her resentment toward the Krim family also increased. On April 18, 2018, the jury found Jocelyn Ortegas guilty of first-degree child murder. The jury describing her actions as pure evil and dismissing the defense's argument that she wasn't responsible due to mental illness. Although the judge acknowledged that her mental illness influenced her actions that day, he expressed regret that she nor had secured the psychiatric treatment she needed. However, he stressed that planning a crime on that day had been meticulous. Before the court handed down its verdict, Marina said that Jocelyn ended up destroying her own family. At this point, Marina broke into tears, and Jocelyn shamefully lowered her head. Despite the terrible tragedy, the Krim family remained strong. They went on to have 2 more children, sons named Felix and Nose. Kevin requested the judge impose the maximum penalty on Jocelyn to ensure she would never leave prison. He observed no remorse from her and believed she should just spend the rest of her life in prison. The prosecutor echoed Kevin's request, urging the judge to sentence her to life imprisonment without parole. He argued that Jocelyn not only brutally killed Lucia and Leo, and she didn't even regret her actions. She attempted to end her own life to escape responsibility for her actions, but her plan did not succeed. Jocelyn's lawyer requested leniency from the judge during sentencing. She argued that the jury reached this decision because they were influenced by Marina's emotional state, not based on an objective assessment of the evidence. Ultimately, the judge ruled in favor of the prosecution. On May 14, 2018, Jocelyn Ortega, aged 55, received the maximum sentence of life imprisonment without parole. However, she remained composed for most of the trial. The case was particularly difficult when it involved the children, which moved many to tears, but Jocelyn did not cry. When witnesses described the kindness of the Krim family towards her, she shook her head in disagreement. However, she began to cry when the verdict was announced. After the verdict, Jocelyn expressed her regret in Spanish, saying she very sorry about everything that happened, and asked for forgiveness from God, Marina, and Kevin. During the trial, it was disclosed that the Krim family had been misled by false claims of Jocelyn's experience as a nanny. Hello again, true crime fans, we've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Melinda Pliskovic. Melinda Pliskovic was born on January 5, 1968, in Strongsville, Ohio, a city near Cleveland with a population of about 45,000. This city is always quiet, calm, and safe. Residents often left their doors unlocked. At 24, Melinda married Bruce, and together they had 3 children, 2 daughters, Megan and Anna, and the younger son, Kyle, who has Down syndrome. The children give meaning to her life, and she devoted a lot of time to Kyle, striving to give the boy a fulfilling and happy life. The family lived in a spacious, cozy 2-story house and a large basement. Melinda worked as a math teacher and also coached the school football team. She leading an active and fulfilling life, while Bruce worked as an accountant. In 2015, their 19-year-old daughter Megan moved to another city to attend college. The eldest daughter, Anna, who was 20, had been engaged to her high school boyfriend, Jeffrey Scullin, also 20. Anna worked as a waitress, while Jeffrey was a technician who serviced heating systems. As they were planning their wedding, Anna discovered she was pregnant, which brought joy to the whole family. Anna's parents suggested that Jeffrey move in with them because the couple couldn't afford their own place. Anna and Jeffrey happily agreed because they needed both material and emotional support, along with help in taking care of the baby. Jeffrey moved in with Anna's family in June 2016, just before their daughter was born. The baby was born on July 3rd and was named Aurora. Everything went well. Melinda helped Anna take care of Aurora, helping the young couple save money for their wedding and buying a house. At that time, the household consisted of 6 people: Melinda, Bruce, Kyle, Anna, Jeffrey, and baby Aurora. Shortly after that, something unusual occurred. Melinda, Bruce, and Kyle went to visit relatives, leaving Anna and Jeffrey home with Aurora. In the evening, they noticed 4 people in their backyard, talking, smoking, and watching the house. This was alarming, as nothing like this had happened before. Jeffrey, feeling scared, called the police, but by the time they arrived, the strangers had already left. The officer checked the yard but found nothing suspicious and noted that there were no cameras around the house. The police left, advising them to call again if the strangers returned. In the days following the incident, Anna and Jeffrey were very cautious, frequently looking out the windows and ensuring no one was around. However, no one else came, and eventually, they forgot about the incident. In November 2016, Anna was home with Aurora, and she heard someone trying to open the back door. She thought it was Jeffrey or her parents had returned and forgotten the key. She picked up her daughter and went to the back door. As she approached the large glass sliding doors, she saw the figure of an unfamiliar man. It was clear he was neither her father nor Jeffrey. Terrified, she froze, unsure of what to do next. The man noticed Anna through the glass, looked at her, and then left. Panicking, she grabbed her phone, ran upstairs to her room, locked the door, and called the police. When the police arrived, the man was gone. The officer searched the area but found no signs of him. Anna couldn't describe the man because it was dark and she could only see his silhouette. In January 2017, Anna went back to work full-time at the restaurant. Around the same time, a troubling incident occurred, involving some strangers. Someone broke into Bruce's car and stole a laptop. The family believes that the strangers were following them, and this time, the strangers left no trace. A few months later, Anna, Jeffrey, and Aurora were home one evening, preparing for bed. She looked out the window and noticed 3 strangers standing in their backyard, watching them. She became very frightened and started to panic. She called the police, while Jeffrey, seeing the strangers, felt he needed to confront them. He grabbed a flashlight and went outside. When the strangers saw him, they ran away. The police arrived shortly after but found nothing. Shortly after this incident, another incident occurred. One evening, Anna was at home with Aurora, while Melinda was upstairs. Suddenly, she heard a noise at the back door. Someone was trying to open it again. She quietly approached the door to see who it was. This time, she saw 2 men dressed in dark clothing and hooded jackets, which obscured their faces. Unable to see them clearly, so she decided to scare them off. She screamed loudly, and it worked. The men were startled and ran away. Melinda, hearing her scream, rushed downstairs in a panic, shouting that the strangers had returned. Then, she called the police, who came to inspect the house and surrounding area, but found nothing suspicious. The entire family lived in fear, confused about why they were being watched and what the strangers wanted. Everyone was worried that they might be attacked. In September 2017, Melinda realized that her car's spare key was missing. It had always been kept in the same spot, and she was certain she hadn't misplaced it. The family feared that strangers had broken into their house and taken the keys. As time went on, they learned the reason behind the theft. The car's alarm frequently went off at night, and someone started the car and drove away. Bruce also discovered that nails had been placed in the tires of his car. Additionally, the family noticed that money was disappearing from their home. They called the police 3 times, but each time, the officers were unable to find any fingerprints or evidence of a break-in, as the intruders left no traces. In October 2017, another unsettling incident occurred. Melinda and Jeffrey were at home with Aurora when they heard someone trying to open the front door. Jeffrey walked the dog to the door to see what was going on. He saw a large man in dark clothing with his face covered standing outside. The dog barked, which frightened the intruder, causing him to flee. Melinda called the police again, but they found nothing. On October 23, 2017, Jeffrey, Aurora, and Bruce went to the restaurant where Anna worked and they had dinner together. Melinda and Kyle stayed home, and something terrible happened that night. After dinner, Jeffrey, along with Aurora and Bruce, headed home in separate cars. Melinda's car was parked outside, the front door was closed, and the dog was outside. Bruce knocked on the house door, but nobody answered. He knocked again, and his son Kyle eventually opened the door. Kyle is depressed and doesn't say anything, so he can't tell Bruce what happened. Bruce felt something was wrong with Melinda. As he entered the kitchen and discovered she lying face down on the floor, covered in blood. Jeffrey held Aurora as he entered the kitchen. When he saw Melinda with gunshot wounds to her head, Bruce screamed in shock, took Aurora from Jeffrey, and urged his son Kyle to come outside with him. Jeffrey quickly rushed into the street and called 911, telling them they had just come from a restaurant and found Melinda's body in the kitchen. Later, Bruce also called 911, he feeling frustrated that the police had not responded to their previous reports about strangers watching them and trying to break into their home, and now Melinda was dead. The police and ambulance quickly arrived at the scene, they finding 49-year-old Melinda deceased. They began a thorough investigation of the house and surrounding area, then, they found a clue. In Jeffrey's car, they found a gun and a bloody knife, concealed under his clothes in the back seat. He couldn't explain where they came from, so both the knife and the gun were sent for analysis. Additionally, blood was discovered on the car door and on his sweatpants. Immediately after that, Jeffrey was taken in for questioning. He stated that he had spoken to Melinda the day before her death, when she expressed a desire to go to a restaurant with him and take Kyle along. She even asked Jeffrey to contact his mother to arrange a meeting. However, then due to a leg injury, so she changed her mind and decided to stay home with Kyle. The following afternoon, he visited Melinda. She had just returned from a doctor's appointment and seemed fine. He then went to his aunt's house, and later that evening, Melinda was found dead. When the police contacted his aunt, she denied having seen him that day. During questioning, Bruce, Melinda's husband, mentioned that in the afternoon, she sent him an unusual message, saying to meet at 4:30 in a beer restaurant. He found it odd because they typically discussed their plans over the phone beforehand. Before, she had never communicated to him in that manner, but at the time, he didn't think much of it. He just replied that he agreed, and then he went to the restaurant. Now, he realizes that the message had been written by someone else. Bruce arrived at the beer restaurant but didn't find Melinda there. After having a drink, he decided to go to the gym for a workout. While he was there, Jeffrey called to remind him about a meeting at the restaurant where Anna worked. Anna also called and asked if he would come. Bruce got to the restaurant after 7 p.m. By then, Jeffrey was already eating and drinking beer, but Melinda was still missing. Bruce asked Jeffrey where Melinda and Kyle were, but Jeffrey said they had no idea. Melinda's phone was off, which was unusual. They quickly finished their meal and prepared to go home. However, Jeffrey asked to stop at a gas station first and requested that Bruce accompany him to keep an eye on the baby, Aurora. They returned home and discovered Melinda's body. Investigators believe that Jeffrey killed Melinda before going to the restaurant and arranged the meeting there to create an alibi for himself. The autopsy revealed that Melinda had suffered 35 stab wounds to her back and 3 gunshot wounds to her head. Jeffrey and Anna were engaged and living with Anna's parents. Her parents have supported them in everything and are planning to buy a house for them, with the money have saved. Although Jeffrey and Melinda occasionally had arguments, which is common in relationships between a son-in-law and wife's mother, but they didn't have any serious arguments. So what could Jeffrey's motives be? He was facing financial difficulties, he had quit his job and was only working part-time. With the wedding scheduled for October 28, 2017, just 5 days away, he didn't have enough money to pay for it. His credit card was locked, so he couldn't make any payments. Melinda was in charge of organizing the wedding and was responsible for paying the restaurant and other expenses. This situation could have led to an argument between them. He may be worried that she will tell Anna about his financial problems, causing the wedding to go off. Or maybe she found out something else about him. Jeffrey's acquaintances mentioned that he always hated Melinda. It also seemed odd that Jeffrey didn't introduce his parents to her family. Although they wanted to arrange a meeting, but he kept scheduling and then canceling it, claiming his parents were unavailable. However, when researchers interviewed Jeffrey's parents, they revealed they had no knowledge of these meetings, as Jeffrey never invited them. Despite all this, Melinda's relatives still do not believe he is guilty. They were convinced that the murder was committed by some strangers who had been observing the house. Strangely enough, these strangers began observing the house after Jeffrey had moved in. It is also worth noting that no other homes were followed by these strangers and the police never identified them. DNA tests confirmed that the blood on the knife and door belonged to Melinda, and Jeffrey's DNA was found on the knife handle. Forensic examination of the gun showed that the gun found in Jeffrey's car was involved in her shooting. Subsequently, Jeffrey was arrested and charged with Melinda's murder. He failed a lie detector test and later confessed to the crime during further questioning. He said that when he arrived at the house, Melinda was furious. She pointed a gun at him, screamed, and threatened him. He grabbed the gun from her and shot her 3 times, claiming he didn't remember stabbing her 35 more times. People wonder why Jeffrey continues to attack Melinda, even though there is no longer any threat to his life. No one believed his story. After Jeffrey's arrest, the strangers watching their house suddenly disappeared and everything stopped. Investigators believe that all of the incidents involving strangers were planned by Jeffrey. They may have been his friends or he hired someone to intimidate Melinda's family for a year and a half. It seemed like Jeffrey was trying to mislead the police and derail the investigation. It was also odd that Melinda's family, despite being wealthy, did they not install CCTV cameras. It turned out Jeffrey opposed these security measures, including tracking apps, possibly fearing exposure. Everything pointed back to Jeffrey. He arranged the dinner at the restaurant, delayed leaving, and then took Bruce to the gas station. Strangers began watching the house after Jeffrey moved in and vanished after his arrest. Melinda's funeral was held on October 28, 2017, which was supposed to be the wedding day for Anna and Jeffrey, but the wedding did not happen. At the funeral, relatives, friends, neighbors, students, and colleagues remembered Melinda as a caring wife, a loving grandmother, and a beloved teacher who dedicated 27 years of service to the school. She was also a coach and mentor. Jeffrey attended the funeral along with other relatives. Kyle, who witnessed his mother's murder, never accepted that she was gone and continues to wait for her return. In addition to the murder charge, Jeffrey was also charged with assault, falsifying evidence, giving false testimony, and endangering children. During the trial, the prosecution argued that the murder was not self-defense. Jeffrey had meticulously planned it and staged break-ins to mislead the investigation. Jeffrey Scullin did not plead guilty but also did not contest the charges. Melinda's family requested that he be denied parole to prevent him from harming anyone else. Jeffrey was found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment, with the possibility of parole in 33 years. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Rocio Waninkoff. Hilaria Alicia Hornos was born on December 2, 1952, in the rural province of Jaén, Spain, specifically in the city of Arroyo de Lojanco. At the age of 24, she fell in love and married Willem Waninkoff, a Dutch citizen. They had 3 children, a son, Guillermo, followed by 2 daughters, Rosa and Rocio. However, as their family grew, so did the strain on their marriage. Willem suffered from alcoholism, which led to frequent absences from home and eventually led to his losing his job. Their arguments escalated, with Willem sometimes raising his voice at Alicia and becoming aggressive. To support her family, Alicia took a job as a maid at a hotel in Ibiza. During this difficult period, she met Dolores, who was the director of the hotel where she worked. Dolores Vasquez was the daughter of immigrants from Galicia. She is highly educated and polite, and a very interesting conversationalist. A strong friendship developed between Alicia and Dolores, which later developed into a romantic relationship. A year after starting her relationship with Dolores, Alicia decided to divorce Willem. He then returned to the Netherlands, and Alicia moved in with Dolores. Soon after, the couple bought a new house in Malaga. After the divorce, Alicia gained custody of all 3 children and raised them with Dolores. All 3 of Alicia's children loved Dolores, and the 5 of them lived together as a family. In 1988, Alicia and Dolores chose to end their romantic relationship, but continued to live together as friends until 1994. After 11 years, they parted ways, and Alicia began dating a man named Juan Charillo. She moved into a new place and embraced her new romantic life. With her children grown and her new partner by her side, life felt vibrant and full of love. On the morning of October 10th, 1999, Alicia discovered that her daughter, Rocio, was missing. Initially, she wasn't alarmed, thinking Rocio might have spent the night at her boyfriend's house or a friend's place. However, as the day went on and Rocio still had not returned, Alicia grew worried. The family reached out to Rocio's friends and boyfriend, hoping to find out where she was, but no one had seen her. On the evening of October 9th, Rocio left home around 5:30 p.m. after saying goodbye to her mother and older sister, Rosa. She was headed to a fair in Fuengirola with her boyfriend, Antonio, and her friends. Rocio lived in the La Tierra neighborhood, which was very close to Antonio's house. She spent time at his place until 10:30 p.m. and planned to return home briefly to shower and change before heading to the fair. Unfortunately, she never arrived home. Although Alicia was worried about her daughter Rocio's disappearance, she chose to go for a walk with Juan instead of contacting the police immediately. While walking down the street, Alicia noticed a large blood stain on the road. She pointed it out to Juan, who initially didn't think much of it. However, as they got closer, Alicia noticed her daughter's sneakers lying there with drops of blood on them. Alicia was very panicked, and while walking, they also discovered a napkin and some blood on a vacant lot next to the path Rocio often walked. Alicia immediately called the police, and a missing person report was filed with a detailed description of Rocio. She had long hair, brown eyes, and was last seen wearing a white Nike t-shirt and purple pants. Police quickly arrived at the scene where the blood was found, and forensic officers conducted a forensic examination of the crime scene to determine whose blood was on the road and sneakers. Initially, the investigation suggested that there had been an assault or fight that resulted in injuries. The trail showed several bloodstains, including long ones that looked like someone had moved quickly, possibly running. Eventually, the bloodstains disappeared, but the search team discovered a large trail that suggested significant blood loss. They also discovered bloody footprints. These led to tire tracks, where the bloodstains stopped. Next to the tire tracks, they found a cigarette butt from a brand that is not common in Spain. Forensic teams have collected all relevant samples to assist in the investigation, and it is hoped that DNA from these samples will help identify people who were at the scene. A detailed investigation was conducted, along with analysis of the blood found at the scene. Although the search for Rocio continues, police believe it is highly likely that Rocio was murdered. The blood trail began on the sidewalk and led to a large pool of blood, indicating significant blood loss that likely led to her death. Nearby, there were drag marks near the tire. This tire was identified from a small car, specifically a tire model that was discontinued in 1993. Since the drag marks extended over a steep area, it can be concluded that at least 2 people moved the body before a vehicle later arrived to remove the body. The search for Rocio continued, with volunteers scouring the area on foot and on motorbikes. Flyers with Rocio's picture were widely distributed, and news channels reported extensively on Rocio's disappearance. The family actively cooperated with journalists to get the word out about Rocio. Reporters from all television channels gathered outside Rocio Waninkoff's home, hoping for her safe return. However, as time passed, the search yielded no clues. A few days after Rocio's disappearance, a local taxi driver came to the police station with vital information. He reported that on the night of Rocio's disappearance, around 10 p.m., he narrowly avoided a collision with an SUV traveling at high speed in the opposite lane, near where Rocio's sneakers were found on the side of the road. As he passed the car, he also heard a loud scream. This evidence strongly suggested that Rocio had been abducted and murdered by an unknown assailant. DNA analysis later confirmed that the blood found on the road belonged to Rocio. The news left her family devastated, and the sense of loss quickly spread, affecting not only Rocio's loved ones, but the entire country of Spain. On November 2, 1999, 25 days after Rocio's disappearance, a disfigured body, believed to be Rocio's, was discovered near the Los Altos del Rodeo Athletic Club, between Marbella and San Pedro de Alcantara. The body was partially obscured by bushes and leaves, lying behind a fence separating a residential area from a nearby highway. The body was found on a narrow road that was difficult for cars to access. Rocio's body was found in another town. When police arrived, they found the body severely decomposed. During the collection of evidence, large black garbage bags containing Rocio's clothing were found. One of the bags had the number 8 painted on it, suggesting that the bags had been reused rather than purchased specifically for transporting the body. Police found clothing that they believed might belong to the missing Rocio. Her sister Rosa identified several rings, 2 t-shirts, and other items in 2 trash bags near the body as belonging to Rocio. The t-shirts had been torn from stab wounds. Rocio's body was then taken to the laboratory for forensic analysis, where experts worked carefully, applying their knowledge and skills. They faced a difficult task due to the severe decomposition of the body. Decomposition occurs much more quickly in rain and high temperatures, especially when there is humidity. The objective was to gather additional evidence to aid the investigation and understand how the attack happened. Several closed wounds were discovered, along with 8 stab wounds on the Rocio's back. Experts believe the attack was swift and violent, suggesting the Rocio was either restrained or unable to defend themselves. Fingerprints were found on plastic bags at the scene where the body was located. The police already had fingerprints and tire tracks from a vehicle, and they also collected 2 tissue samples from Rocio's body. At that stage, there was insufficient evidence to identify a specific suspect, but the investigation had gathered some information and leads. Public pressure had a significant impact on the investigation, prompting police to quickly search for evidence, but they were unable to. Because Rocio's body was so badly decomposed, they were unable to determine whether she had been sexually assaulted. Police speculated that the crime was motivated by personal vendetta and deep anger, suggesting that the attacker may have been an acquaintance or someone very close to Rocio. After collecting evidence, the police conducted further interviews. First, they questioned Rocio's boyfriend, Antonio Hurat, who was the last person to see her alive and was supposed to see her that night. He gave an alibi, saying he had fallen asleep at home and had not attended the fair that day. The police also questioned all of Rocio's relatives and friends, but each had a solid alibis. A year after Rocio Waninkoff's death, the police had narrowed down the number of suspects, and by the end of that year, they had identified a prime suspect, Dolores Vasquez. There was no evidence against Dolores, but the media led people to believe that Dolores was guilty, Dolores was the lover of Alicia, Rocio's mother. Unfortunately, journalists distorted and even fabricated the story, claiming that Alicia had accused Dolores from the first day after Rocio's death. In reality, their relationship had ended 4 years before the crime. The investigation followed the media story, focusing only on Dolores and creating a motive in the case. People speculated that Rocio may have interfered with the romantic relationship between the two. Many believed that if Rocio had not intervened, Alicia would have returned to Dolores. It was implied that Dolores had acted out of revenge against Rocio. The media and public were quick to accuse Dolores of murder when she was arrested, although she did not confess to any of the crimes. The local community was certain of her guilt, largely because police suspected that the killer was someone close to Rocio. Family members described Dolores as aggressive, violent, and extremely jealous. Alicia, meanwhile, told reporters that Dolores was both vengeful and cruel. Dolores was widely criticized by the public. Her unconventional lifestyle was a target during the trial, as it was considered unusual in Spain. The media portrayed her as a violent and cold-blooded woman who had spent 4 years plotting her hate crimes. The trial attracted a large crowd gathered outside the courthouse. Journalists have widely reported that a close family friend has been charged with Rocio's murder. Dolores is unpopular and faces an uphill battle in court. Public opinion matters in this case. Rumors and sensational media reports are likely to sway the jury's opinion. Virtually every television station has portrayed Dolores Vasquez as responsible for Rocio's death. In reality, there was no evidence against Dolores. However, it seemed that the justice system felt the need to convict someone and chose her as a scapegoat due to her questionable alibi and various flaws. Dolores was not present at the crime scene. The tire tracks did not match her car, the fabric fibers found did not come from her clothes, and the fingerprints on the trash bags did not belong to her. She also had an alibi, stating that she was babysitting her sick mother and her young niece that day, but this was ignored. Over 50 witnesses were called to testify in court. Dolores only took the stand once and stated that she did not kill Rocio and that she did not even see her that day. She asked all of Spain to find the real culprit because it was not her, and that person could have been in the courtroom at the time. She stated that there was no evidence against her and never would be because she was innocent. It is noted that the judicial system in Spain is often criticized for being inadequate and often bending the law. Prosecutors and police in Spain focus on prioritizing their theories over justice, showing a complete disregard for the legal process. The police report highlighted circumstantial evidence linking Dolores to the crime and included a psychological profile of her, as there was no physical evidence. Ultimately, the jury found Dolores Vasquez guilty of murder, resulting in a 16-year prison sentence. The verdict was met with public celebration. Rocio's funeral drew a large crowd. During this time, the Rocio family and the local community felt a growing sense of fear. This atmosphere of fear was amplified by the numerous television programs that covered the case. After Dolores's arrest, the Rocio family appeared on various programs, sharing past stories that described Dolores as cold, unfriendly, demanding, and cruel. It took years and another similar crime to reveal that Rocio Waninkoff was not killed by Dolores Vasquez. On the morning of August 15, 2003, the parents of 17-year-old Sonia Carabantes reported her missing to the police. Sonia's friends said they had dropped Sonia off at her home, but she was not there. A short distance from her home, near a tree, her parents discovered her shoes, purse, and cell phone, along with traces of blood on nearby cars. The police quickly began searching for and investigating Sonia's case. As time went on, the family's despair deepened. They searched the neighborhood, but the bloodstains on Sonia's clothes left little hope that she would be returned safely. A key piece of evidence in Sonia's case was the car's headlights. The police contacted all local auto repair shops to find a car with a broken headlight matching the description. At the same time, the police found many similarities between Rocio's and Sonia's cases. Both girls had disappeared during the fair. All employees working at the fairs in Coin and Matril were investigated, as was the case with Rocio. Flyers with Sonia's picture were widely distributed, and many people actively participated in the search for her. They not only volunteered their time, but also provided any assistance needed to help the police. Police continued their investigation. However, on the 5th day after Sonia went missing, search dogs led them to Sonia's body, which was hidden in a creek under a pile of rocks. Heavy rains the night before had washed away any evidence that could help identify her attacker. On the day of her disappearance, Sonia had been at a fair in Coin. She had said goodbye to her friends near her home, where she was then attacked. Her attacker struck her multiple times, leaving her unconscious and defenseless due to the sudden and violent nature of the attack. The attacker then abducted her by car to a remote area away from her home. Sonia suffered both internal and external injuries before being strangled, ultimately resulting in her death. Sonia was found quickly, allowing police to gather and analyze crucial evidence from her body. Colonel Paca Gabella announced that significant evidence was discovered, including biological material. This was analyzed and added to the police forensic DNA database, leading to matches with genetic material found on a cigarette butt from the Rocio Waninkoff case. When comparing the two DNA samples, they were identical. This revealed that the man who killed Rocio in 1999 was the same individual who attacked Sonia. This suggests that Dolores Vasquez, who was wrongly convicted, while the real killer is still at large, took the life of another young girl. The evidence is clear: an English cigarette butt from Rocio's case and the skin particles found under Sonia's fingernails, all linked to the same offender. On September 18, Cecilia Pantoja, a young woman, contacted the police with suspicions about her ex-husband after seeing blood on his t-shirt just days after Sonia's body was found. Cecilia also mentioned that her ex-husband was away from home twice, driving somewhere on the day of the attack on Rocio. With the help of DNA testing and Cecilia's testimony, the police were able to identify the real killer of both Rocio and Sonia as Tony Alexander King. Tony's criminal activities began as a teenager in the Holloway area of North London. In 1985, the area was hit by a series of violent attacks on women, where victims were strangled and assaulted. At the time, Tony went by his birth name, Anthony Bramwit, then 19, was convicted of strangling 5 women until they were unconscious, using a rope or cable, and then assaulting them. The judge sentenced Tony to 10 years in prison, calling him a monster for his actions. Tony served only half of his sentence and was released in 1991, but he returned to prison shortly afterwards for robbing a woman and threatening her with a knife. He changed his name to Tony Alexander King in search of a new life, married Cecilia Pantoja, and tried to have a normal family life. They had a daughter together, but Tony soon returned to his old ways. A month after Sonia's death, he was arrested. During questioning, Tony admitted to killing 2 innocent girls. After his arrest, he recounted that he followed Rocio as she walked home from her boyfriend's house and threatened her with a knife when she tried to escape. Rocio was attacked with a knife in the neck, and Tony then stabbed her 9 times. In 2005, Tony Alexander King was sentenced to 36 years in prison for kidnapping, assault, and murder of Sonia. The court also ordered Tony to pay her family about $350,000. Tony was also sentenced to 7 years in prison for intentionally causing violence against a woman in Malaga in 2001. The following year, Tony was convicted of Rocio's murder and received an additional 19-year sentence. Before the trial, Tony wrote to Sonia and Rocio's mother, begging for their forgiveness. He is currently serving his sentence at Herrera de la Mana Maximum Security Prison in Ciudad Real, Spain. After the case was over, a huge scandal broke out in Spain because the innocent Dolores Vázquez was wrongly convicted of the murder of Rocio Waninkoff. It is hard to accept that not only can the police and the courts unfairly punish innocent people, but society can also judge and degrade them harshly. Even when a person can prove their innocence, they are still not recognized. It took more than a year to confirm that Dolores Vázquez was telling the truth and that she was completely innocent. In 2008, the Spanish Ministry of Justice offered Dolores Vázquez 120,000 euros in compensation, significantly less than the 4 million euros she had originally requested. Despite her wrongful conviction, Dolores never received an apology from the police. After being released from prison, Dolores returned to the UK. Now, more than 20 years later, Dolores has yet to receive an apology for her conviction, nor has she received any compensation since her case was closed in 2014. She works for a transport company in East London and has undergone a psychological assessment following her traumatic experience. She recently said she is still waiting for an apology after suffering from anxiety for years, which has made it difficult for her to communicate with others. The case of Dolores Vázquez, who was wrongfully imprisoned, is considered one of the most serious miscarriages of justice in Spain since 1910. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Sierra Halseth. Sierra was a sweet young girl who loved spending time with her father, taking lots of pictures together. However, she burned those pictures and ran away with her boyfriend. She later blamed her father for everything, claiming that he had abused her. But was her words true? If so, why had no one heard of them before? Here is the full story of Sierra Halseth, her sudden change in behavior, and the tragic death of Daniel Halseth. Daniel Halseth was born in January 1976. He earned his bachelor's degree in music from Western Oregon University, where he was known for his drumming skills. He then pursued a degree in business with the goal of becoming a successful businessman, and he eventually achieved that goal. At the age of 20, he met Elizabeth, the youngest woman ever elected to the Nevada State Senate. They got married in March 2001, which led Daniel to move to Nevada. The couple had 3 children: Dana, Jordan, and Sierra. They settled in Las Vegas because Daniel found a job there, but the family was not happy for a long time. 10 years after their wedding, Daniel and Elizabeth divorced. In October 2011, Daniel was arrested after Elizabeth accused him of trying to force her to have sex, even though they were still legally married. A month later, he filed for divorce, accusing Elizabeth of cheating on him. Sierra's siblings were still young when their parents divorced, but the family's troubles continued. Daniel and Elizabeth both remarried quickly. Despite this, Daniel and his ex-wife Elizabeth maintained their relationship for the sake of their children and even maintained a joint bank account. However, due to the constant instability, Elizabeth began a custody battle that lasted until Sierra started high school. Eventually, Dana and Jordan moved in with Elizabeth, while Sierra stayed with Daniel. The father and daughter have a close bond, and Daniel often shares photos of him and Sierra having fun together on social media, showing his love for his youngest daughter. In June 2020, Sierra began dating 18-year-old Aaron Guerrero, who was 2 years her senior. Unlike typical high school relationships, their relationship progressed quickly. They began making alarming plans for the future, including robbing their parents and running away to California. Both sets of parents quickly noticed negative changes in Sierra and Aaron's behavior, fearing that the situation would worsen if the kids spent time together. Unfortunately, the parents' worries and concerns led the couple to make poor choices. By Christmas 2020, Aaron and Sierra's families decided that the young couple should stop dating, and they were officially banned from dating. While it may seem like Sierra and Aaron are following their parents' wishes, that is not the case. Sierra and Aaron quietly waited for the right moment to carry out their plan of revenge against their families. Their goal was to eliminate their parents who had hindered their relationship. On December 16, 2020, Sierra's father, Daniel, wrote a heartfelt post for her birthday, expressing his love for her. He shared that when he was 9 years old, he dreamed of having a big family and always wanted to be a great father. He expressed his happiness that he had fulfilled that dream, especially because he had Sierra. Little did he know that Sierra was plotting to kill him at the time. On April 3, 2021, Daniel shared an old video online of him and his daughter having fun together, saying that they were enjoying their time. 5 days later, Sierra ran away from home. That same day, another unusual thing happened. $1,300 was withdrawn from her parents' joint bank account without any notice. Elizabeth found this strange because Daniel would never withdraw such a large amount of money without informing her. Elizabeth sent Daniel a text message, but he did not respond all day. By this point, many people, including Elizabeth and his mother, Christina, were worried because Daniel had stopped answering his phone. Elizabeth then texted her daughter, Sierra, to ask how Daniel was doing. Surprisingly, Sierra replied that Daniel's phone was broken, but he was fine. However, Daniel's family grew increasingly concerned. They knew he could use his laptop to communicate, and if his phone was broken, he could fix it quickly. Daniel regularly posting videos on Instagram and sharing his thoughts on Twitter with many followers. His mother was aware of this, so his sudden silence was concerning to her. She asked a family friend to check if Daniel was at home. The family friend contacted Sierra to find out where her father was. Sierra replied that he was in the shower. The friend then asked why Daniel wasn't answering his phone. Sierra explained that her phone was broken. She assured the family friend that she would have her father call back from another phone as soon as he finished showering. However, that didn't happen, and the next day, Sierra stopped answering calls and texts. Christina's increasingly concerned when Sierra did not respond to her texts. Concerned, she decided to call her niece, but Sierra only said that her father was in the shower. In a fit of rage, Christina threatened to call the police, causing Sierra to stop answering her phone altogether. That day, surveillance footage showed Daniel's blue Nissan leaving the area, causing Christina to become even more concerned. She continued to call on Wednesday, debating whether to contact the police or have Peggy and Joey come over. Eventually, Sierra stopped answering her phone altogether. Meanwhile, Joey and Peggy, Daniel's landlords and close friends, were on their way, but they informed Christina that it would take a few hours for them to arrive because they were out of town. Christina was so worried that she decided to call 911 to report that her son, Daniel, had been missing for 2 days. Daniel had been absent from work, and friends and family had been unable to reach him. Christina noted that Daniel was not usually like this. He lived with his daughter, who was also not returning calls or texts. The most worrying detail was that money had been withdrawn from Daniel's account at 3 different ATMs. Police were then dispatched to the address, but Joe and Peggy had already arrived. When Joey and Peggy arrived at Daniel's house, they found the front door open and Daniel's car gone. They cautiously walked inside and immediately smelled a strong smell of smoke. They searched every room in the house, but found only the remains of a fire. There was no sign of Daniel. However, things took a turn for the worse when they entered the garage. In the middle of the garage, they saw a sleeping bag with something inside. Upon inspection, they discovered Daniel's body, burned beyond recognition. Joey quickly called the police and told them they were the homeowners. They had just arrived and discovered that a fire had broken out in the house 2 days earlier. Joey also mentioned that he had seen a body in a sleeping bag in the garage. A few minutes later, the police arrived at their address. During their investigation, they confirmed that Daniel, 45, had been brutally murdered. The forensic team discovered a significant amount of shocking evidence in Daniel's home. First, they found a chainsaw carelessly left on the living room floor. In the kitchen, there was another saw with blood smeared along its edge, and 2 knives were found in the sink. The police also located a receipt from a store and an ATM. Despite signs of a fire in the living room and the bloody saw in the kitchen, it was evident that someone had made serious efforts to clean the house. Daniel's autopsy revealed a gruesome scene. He had suffered 70 slash wounds. Most of these injuries were to his head, neck, and torso. His body, burned beyond recognition, was stuffed into a sleeping bag and moved to the garage. Police concluded that the person responsible for Daniel's death harbored intense hatred, as evidenced by the brutal stabbing and beating he endured. After he died, the attacker even burned his body in the living room. When the police spoke to the family, it was clear that there were no obvious suspects. No one could understand why Daniel had such a vicious enemy. However, Christina noted that Sierra had been acting very strangely. When asked about Daniel's situation, she always replied that her father was taking a shower. And then Sierra stopped contacting Christina completely. Additionally, Sierra had gone missing from the house. On April 9, police received a tip that led them to a receipt from a local store and access to surveillance camera footage. They discovered that Aaron had purchased a saw and gloves. That same day, Sierra was seen in the footage leaving the store with 2 bottles of bleach, using Daniel's credit card to make the purchase. Police quickly gathered information about Aaron. They learned that both families had forbidden Aaron and Sierra from seeing each other, so he ran away from home on April 8. With the addition of surveillance footage, police had enough evidence to issue arrest warrants for them. On April 13, police arrested Sierra and Aaron 400 miles from their home in Salt Lake City, Utah, for not paying their bus fare. When police conducted a background check, they discovered that the couple was wanted for murder. Additionally, police discovered Daniel's blue Nissan, the car Sierra and Aaron had used to get away. Inside the trunk, they found a bloody blanket. Police seized Sierra and Aaron's phones as evidence. They examined the contents and found a disturbing video on Sierra's phone. In the video, Sierra and Aaron talked about killing Daniel without showing any remorse. After Sierra and Aaron were arrested in Utah, they were taken to the Clark County Detention Center in Nevada. The investigation at the crime scene revealed that Sierra and Aaron intended to dismember Daniel, as a chainsaw and a handsaw were discovered in the house and had been recently purchased for that purpose. As a result, Sierra and Aaron face multiple charges, including murder, arson, conspiracy to commit robbery, and 4 counts of fraudulent use of a credit or debit card. On June 15, 2021, Sierra and Aaron pleaded not guilty at their initial hearing. The case has attracted attention, especially because Sierra seems to have no remorse for her actions against her father. Many were shocked by her seeming indifference. Sierra's defense said her parents' divorce and the long custody battle had a significant impact on Sierra. The therapist then explained that this type of trauma can significantly disrupt a child's development. If Sierra had previously experienced emotional trauma, any change or loss could have added to her feelings of despair. Daniel's family has stated that Sierra and Aaron's complete lack of remorse is reprehensible and inexcusable. They expect justice to be served in the most serious manner. They loved Daniel deeply and miss him. This will be their only statement. In May 2022, Sierra Halseth and Aaron Guerrero agreed to a plea deal. However, it is unclear whether the couple truly felt remorse or whether they agreed to the plea deal in exchange for a lighter sentence. The judge sentenced Sierra and Aaron to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 22 years. This was part of the deal they made when they pleaded guilty to murder and other charges. After 22 years, they could be released around the age of 40, which would give them a chance to start over. After the verdict, Daniel's mother, Christina, spoke to the press, expressing her grief. Christina said that Sarah had shown no remorse for the murder she had committed. In fact, during the trial, Sierra tried to blame Daniel, claiming that she had been forced into the act. Sierra said that her father had assaulted her, pinned her down, and beat her. However, Christina pointed out that Sierra could have reported the incident to the police, but instead chose a different and more tragic course of action. In a surprising turn of events, Aaron was the only one to apologize for his actions. He sought forgiveness from Daniel's family, who noticed that Aaron showed remorse and emotion, unlike Sierra.